Northborough Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the Northborough Select Board are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The Act allows the Northborough Select Board to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of the meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. I'll now go around the virtual room and make sure that everybody can hear and be heard, just in the order that you appear on my screen. Laura Zeiton.
Here.
Kristen Wickstead.
Here.
Lisa Maselli.
Here.
Julianne Hirsch.
Here.
We also have with us Interim Town Administrator Bob Reed.
Here.
Assistant Town Administrator Becca Meekins.
Present.
And DPW Director Scott Charpentier.
Present.
We also have Northborough Cable with us tonight, providing the technical recording and Zoom capabilities. Thanks very much. And the first item on our agenda, as always, is public comment. If there is anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to anything, ideally not something not on the agenda, because you'll have the time later, just go ahead and raise your virtual hands, and I'll be happy to recognize you. I don't see anybody. Going once, going twice. All right, public comment is closed. Next up, we have approval of meeting minutes from June 12th, 2023. Do I hear a motion or any discussion?
I have a question.
Julianne, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a correction to make.
Sure.
Or I would like to offer a correction, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
On page 5.
Yep.
Where it says starts the paragraph facilities manager.
Mm-hmm.
The sentence, Mr. Thompson responded to several questions from members of the board regarding the cost and efforts to preserve the building. It was cost and efforts to remediate mold, lead, and asbestos. And the clause where it says, which is estimated to be between $1 million and $2 million, I think that has to be cleared up, and we have to say something like a ballpark estimate with having assessed the building was speculated at $1 to $2 million.
I think you're right on with changing preserve to something else, because you could read that and assume that preserving the building, like fixing everything up, making it usable, would be whatever the dollar figure is listed later. So maybe change that to remediate the building. He did say between $1 and $2 million. So I think that's accurate from what he said. You could argue whether that's, how much detail has gotten into that figure. We'd obviously get that in more detail later. But I think it's, from my perspective, it's okay to leave the $1 to $2 million, but I would change preserve to remediate.
So I went back and looked, and Sean specifically said it was an off-the-cuff estimate. And what I'm worried about is that people are citing that number already as an official number. And it was also very confusing because I think we don't know if that number included the additions that we're going to remove. So I would like to include some word that says it was speculated and not, it seems like it's an official estimate if we don't write.
You've convinced me. Bob, any other suggestions on how to deal with that?
Well, two. One is, I think it was clear it was an estimate. I think estimate speaks for itself. And although it's not on the agenda, I think that points to the need, maybe at a future meeting or part of the White Cliffs discussion, to actually have that study done. to finally put this to rest. If the concern is that now we've got speculative numbers floating around, that was part of why I wanted to have it on the last agenda, is to get it done, so we would have some firm numbers and people would begin to understand the numbers that we were talking about as far as the White Cliffs project.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that, Bob, but it's focused on the meeting minutes. But I'm okay with, I mean, speculate, estimate, any of those words, I think from my perspective works all right. If you want to propose that as an amendment, I think that's fine.
Well, does
Yeah.
anybody else have any thoughts? No? Okay, so what,
Lisa?
I would do what Julianne said, let her make that proposal and then we second
Yeah.
it.
That's fine. Yeah, you've got the motion, Julianne, so make it as you would like, and I think I'll follow merrily along.
okay, all right then. I move that we approve the meeting minutes of June 12th, 2023 as amended.
Do you want to just state
And I-
specifically what
and
that
I would
amendment
like-
is?
Okay, so, and the amendment is Mr. Thompson responded to several questions from members of the board regarding the cost and efforts to remediate the building of lead, asbestos, and mold, which is speculated to be between $1 million to $2 million.
Second,
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Julianne,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Laura,
aye.
Kristen.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Julianne. Okay. Those were the only meeting minutes we had tonight. Next up, we have a public hearing. I will open the public hearing to act on an application as submitted by 276 Main Street, Northborough LLC, DBA Brothers Liquors, for a change in stock interest and a change in manager for the all-alcoholic beverages package store license for the premises located at 276 West Main Street. And I know we've got some people to bring in. Usually Owen does that. If not, I know who the people are.
I have it up as well. I can.
Okay. Yeah,
hold on.
if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. Okay, and I already see a hand up, I presume, for this item that once we get into the Q&A, I will recognize anyone. Actually, the hand up is one of the people that's coming in for the meeting. I haven't seen anyone in yet. All right, I'll start to bring, oops.
Takes them a minute to come in.
Yep. Okay, so there should be a total of 4 people. That was an amendment that I sent out earlier. Okay. I see 1, 2, 3. Hedges. I see Lieutenant Griffin, of course. I see Krishna Patel and Shirag. And I was given the name of Shirag Bhagat also joining us, who I don't I thought I had seen earlier in the attendees.
He may be on the phone with Krishna as well. I'm
Okay.
not sure if they're together or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as everyone knows, we've got the gang all here. Okay. I will make an assumption that with your attorney here that you wanted to, Attorney Hedges wanted to give us a quick summary of what you're looking to do.
Sure. So this is an application for a change of membership interest and change of license manager for the store known as Brothers Liquors, located at 276 West Main Street. Samir Patel is currently the sole shareholder, or sole member, excuse me, and he's transferring a 40% interest to Chirag Bhagat and a 40% interest to Krishna Patel. Krishna is also going to be the new proposed license manager. But aside from the change in ownership and change in license manager, there's no changes to the operation of the store itself or to the physical location, just those two items. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. We also have with us, just a second, we also have with us, of course, Lieutenant Griffin, who does the research on these things. Lieutenant Griffin, anything that you wish to inform us at this time?
Thank you for the time, Mr. Chair. Nothing to report. Everything checked out okay. Mr. Patel is tip certified, so we're happy about that, and no concerns.
Excellent. Thank you. Members of the board, any questions? Lisa, I saw your hand up a minute ago. You first.
Yes, thank you. Welcome to our meeting tonight. I just have a couple questions just to be a little bit clearer. So there is an actual change of ownership. It's not just the first owner, Mr. Patel, but he's splitting it between the three of them now. So there'll be 40, 40, and 20.
Correct. Samir Patel will retain 20% ownership, and then Krishna and Chirag will each have 40% interest. So three owners total.
Okay, and then Krishna is the now manager of that store.
I believe Samir is the current manager, and Krishna is going to be the proposed manager.
Okay, and they both put in the same amount of hours, 40 hours or more, as it sees. I see it on the application that they put in more than 40 hours each. Well, not each. When the
Correct. Once the transfer occurs. Yep.
And he'll be doing 40.
Correct.
Yep. Could you tell me just what your hours of operation are over there?
Sure. I don't have it in front of me. Krishna, do you happen to know what the hours are?
Yeah, so it's split differently between the days, but opens at 9 a.m. Monday through Saturday, and then it's until 9 p.m. from Monday through Thursday, and on Friday, Saturday it's until 10 p.m. and on Sunday it opens later at 10 a.m. and then closes earlier at 8 p.m.
All right. And how have you been doing now that you've been here for a year? Was it a good year?
For me personally?
You're getting into it, but I'm sure I don't know if you have the last name that's got anything to do with each other, but maybe.
I mean, I've been taking a look at it and things like that up around, but it's definitely growing, I would say, as it's a new business. So it definitely takes some time and effort initially. So that's where we are at right now.
Okay, well, great. Well, it's nice meeting you, and good luck with your future endeavors.
Likewise, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Laura?
I'm just curious, is there a reason to make this change to the license, or is there something that is behind this?
I think when ownership of a business that has a liquor license changed, we need to go through this process.
Oh, I understand that. I just wasn't sure if that's okay. I understand.
Okay. You sure?
Well, I wasn't sure if there was a reason behind the move for Brothers Liquors to make this change. And that was my only question.
No, at this point in time, they're just bringing on two new investors. As was noted previously, this was a new business. Samir Patel initially filled out the application and got the business up and running. And now that they're expanding and, have their feet on the ground, they're bringing in two new members.
Got it. So when you say expanding, do you mean the corporation's expanding?
Just the business itself in terms of the number of members involved.
Okay, but not something specific to the Northborough location.
Nope, just this one location for now.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board? Okay, this being a public hearing, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to offer something of insight? I don't see any electronic hands going up. Anything additional from staff? Anything additional from the applicants? I see nothing of interest, so why don't we go ahead and close the public hearing? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move the board to vote to approve the application as submitted by
Hold on, Laura, I'm sorry. This is actually a two-step process. It's my fault for not clarifying that in the motions that went out ahead of time. First, we close the public hearing, and then in the regular session of the meeting, then we approve or consider approving the license. So how about you make a motion to close the public hearing?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, was there a second? Okay, motion made by Laura, seconded by Julianne. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, Laura?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Public hearing is closed. Are there any discussions on the license application? In which case, I'll entertain a motion on the application.
I move the board to vote to approve the application as submitted by 276 West Main Street, Northborough, LLC, DBA Brothers Liquors, for a change in stock interest and a change in manager for the all alcoholic beverages package store licensed for premises located at 276 West Main Street.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Laura, seconded by Kristen. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Lisa?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Congratulations to the new business owners and wish you continued success.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for joining us. And Lieutenant Griffin, thank you as always. And we'll move along. Let's see. We have one more similar item. This is not actually a public hearing, but this is to act on an application submitted by Vincent F. Picard Post Building Association Incorporated, DBA the American Legion, for a change in the officers, directors, and a change in the manager for the all alcoholic beverages club license for a premises located at the beautiful 402 West Main Street. And we've got a couple of people to bring in for that. Right here. And we have Marshall Gould. I don't see Attorney Gould, at least by name, in here. And Callahan, we've got. Okay. Bill Callahan, I've brought you in. Do you know if Attorney Gould is joining us tonight?
I am actually with Mr. Callahan. Oh, no.
Okay.
We're about here.
We get a 2-for-1 special. Okay, great. Welcome to our meeting. All right, why don't you give us a summary of what you're looking to do here tonight?
Sure. The Legion, which is how it's commonly referred, the actual corporate name is Vincent F. Picard Post Building Association, Inc. Due to the passing of the former president, Rick Courier, it was necessary to get a new president of the corporation and also to lead the Legion.
Marshall, is there a possibility you could get closer to the microphone? Your voice is cutting in.
Sure. I'm sorry. I'm trying to, you can see both of us here because Bill's better looking than I am. Can you hear me any better now?
Yes, it does seem clearer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So last year, at the end of the year, the former president, Rick Courier, passed away. And Bill Callahan has stepped up. He is now the president, and he is seeking to become the manager under the beverage license. He has been working there for a long time and is at the Legion every day, whether they are open or closed, checking on the club. Bill obviously lives close by here in Northborough, and he's a loyal Legion member and a good guy. So if you have any questions of him, he's here with me. He's tip certified. I think the police department has seen the tip certification. I know Diane has a copy of it. And if you have any questions, he's here to speak.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Griffin. Anything to add here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would piggyback off what Attorney Gould has said. Mr. Callahan really stepped up in the unfortunate passing of their prior commander there. He's taken over the role and asked me about how to obtain tip certification and what's the process, and he did a great job. And we have high hopes that he'll continue running a great facility up there at the Legion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Griffin. Members of the board, any questions? Laura.
This isn't a question, but I just wanted to say again my condolences to Mr. Courier and his family. And Mr. Callahan, I'm looking forward to seeing you again, and I wish you all the best in this new position at the Legion.
Thank you.
Lisa?
I'd like to echo that as well to Mr. Courier and his family and his friends. I'll miss him dearly.
Appreciate that. It's a great loss.
Any other questions or comments from the board? This is not formally a public hearing, but of course, for all of our agenda items, we allow and encourage public comment. If anyone in the audience wishes to ask any questions or state anything before we act, now's the time to do so. I don't see anything else. Yeah, anything else from anybody before we act on this? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to approve the application as submitted by Vincent F. Picard Post Building Association Incorporated, doing business as American Legion, for a change in officers or directors and a change in manager for the all alcohol beverages club license for premises located at 402 West Main Street.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Lisa, seconded by Julianne. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Lisa?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Congratulations, and thank you very much, Bill, for, as everyone said, for stepping up and taking good care of an important facility in town.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Okay, and Lieutenant Griffin, I think that concludes your business with us tonight. You're welcome to stay on, of course, as long and as much as you would like. Thanks a lot.
Aye.
Okay, next up on our agenda, we have Rick Leaf of the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation and Hank Roush and Paul Rebello of Habitat for Humanity to give us an update and request on a couple of things. Let's see, we've got Henry Roush coming in, and we've got, oh, okay, good. Owen's taking care of this. I appreciate that. Okay, hi, Rick.
Good evening.
Good evening.
There's also a Joseph Townsend from Habitat that I think giving
Yep.
his information also.
Okay. Okay, Joseph, if you'd like to unmute and turn on your camera if you so choose. Thank you very much. All right, Rick, why don't you introduce yourselves for the benefit of the audience who might not know you, and then introduce your friends.
Okay, I'm Rick Leaf, and I'm the treasurer of the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation. And I appreciate the ability to be here tonight to talk about a couple of projects that we're working with Habitat for Humanity on. Has Paul Rebello joined the meeting, Mitch, do you know?
Yes.
I've joined.
Okay, there you are, Paul. Okay, good.
Rick.
Okay, so I have with me three people from Habitat for Humanity. The Housing Corporation and Habitat have had a good working relationship for about, 7, 8 years now. And they've been a very good partner for us to find opportunities and do development work on our behalf. Hank Roush is a longtime board member for Habitat. Debbie Maruka Hoke, who's their executive director of the Metro West Greater Worcester Habitat for Humanity, is unavailable tonight. She's away on business. So Hank has a lot of experience organizationally with Habitat and will be able to answer any questions people may have about organization, things about Habitat. Paul Rebello is a construction manager. We've worked with him quite a bit on projects. If you're familiar with the project we did on Main Street to renovate those two houses, one of which being the old Gale General Store, Paul was the manager for all of that work, did a phenomenal job on that project. And Joseph Townsend is the new development director, and he's trying to sit in on different meetings that are going on with Habitat right now just to get up to speed on what's going on. So Hank and Paul can answer questions tonight that I won't be able to answer. What I'd like to do is spend a couple of minutes and just kind of talk about the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation. I know that pretty much all the members of the select board now are new to the select board since the last time we made a proposal. And I thought it might be a good idea to give you a little background. In your packet, there was a write-up, a history and project funding write-up about the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation, hopefully gave you some background. And as opposed to going through that in detail, what I'd like to do is also go through the spreadsheet that was in your packet that kind of lists the projects we've done and the funding we've received, and just go through that briefly so we're all on the same page as to where money has been spent and where money is being held in reserve, because that will be important for the two projects we'll be talking about in a couple of minutes. So I wonder if Mitch, if maybe you could share that on the screen.
Sure, do my best. It's small print, but I will endeavor to get that going. All right, I assume you can see this. I apologize for just a second as I rearrange my screen so I can see everybody again. All right, I will do. All right, is that large enough for folks on computer screens to see?
Okay, yeah, when we get down to the numbers on the bottom, they have to page it up a little bit. I think for now,
sure.
And maybe just make it a tad smaller so we can see all the text next to the dates.
Does that work?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, and for folks following at home, this is in our agenda packet, so anyone can see this.
Okay, so basically the Housing Corporation was formed in 2008 as a private nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit. We decided to form as a private nonprofit because it gave us more flexibility in our ability to attract partners and contractors. And also it allowed us to manage community preservation funding more effectively, not having to pay prevailing wage. We were able to do projects less expensively than had we tried to do them as a public entity. That was one of the main reasons we formed as a private nonprofit. Our first major project was the creation of 4 affordable senior rental units at Center Drive on Housing Authority property. That was completed, done between 2000 and 2014, 2011 and 2014. Basically, $600,000 of community preservation funds were approved for that project. Pretty much all of that was spent, but there was a small balance of $569.43 remaining, which continues to exist in the general CPA Affordable Housing Reserve. That's been a very successful project. We've had a continual occupancy, only a couple of months of vacancy since 2014. And we pay a monthly fee to the Housing Authority staff, and they manage that property on our behalf. The Housing Corporation actually owns the building, and we have a 50-year land lease with the State Department of Housing, and we make a small annual lease payment to them to be able to operate the building on that State Housing Authority property. So that was our first project. You can also see that prior to the building being put up, the old senior center building, which existed before the new one was built, had to be demolished. There was community preservation money allocated for that, and that demolition was done for under the budget. So there's another $24,745.85 right now sitting in the General Affordable Housing Reserve. After we did that project, the Housing Authority Board felt that it would be important to have money set aside for future projects. We realized that doing real estate transactions, these transactions may not always come up in a time frame which would be convenient for when annual town meeting is held in April. And so we met with the town administrator, the CPC, the selectmen, and town council, and asked if there'd be a way that we could have community preservation money allocated at town meetings with the understanding that it would be used for future affordable housing by the Housing Corporation, and it could be approved for use by the CPC and the selectmen. Town council agreed that was possible if the warrant articles were written appropriately to specify that. And so at 2015 town meeting, the town approved $500,000 of community preservation money to be set aside for future projects that could be authorized by the CPC and the Board of Selectmen at the time. The town council also said that a legal agreement would have to be executed between the town and the Housing Corporation, because the Housing Corporation was a private non-town entity, and a funding agreement was developed, and you have a sample of that in your packet tonight. There was a little bit of confusion that that funding agreement specifies a project we did recently over at Hitching Post Lane. The purpose of tonight's meeting is not to talk about that project, but the funding agreement was in your packet as just a sample to give you an idea of what this funding agreement looks like. And if the select board does approve the 174 Boundary Street project tonight, we will create a new funding agreement that will establish the conditions under which the money would be dispersed to the Housing Corporation and then to Habitat for Humanity. It was a good idea to establish that $500,000 future project, because that was done in April of 2015. In September of 2015, representatives of Trinity Church came to the Housing Corporation and asked if we'd be interested in purchasing the two buildings they own next to their parking lot at 37 and 39 Main Street for the development of affordable housing. We had been talking to the Habitat for Humanity about the possibility of a joint project, and so we brought them on site. Paul Rabella was one of the key players at the time. They looked at that property and said that, in fact, those two houses could be converted to affordable housing. The interiors would have to be completely gutted, but it could be done. An estimate for the work was done, which came out to be a $900,000 estimate to complete the project. That included the purchase of the property as well as the renovation work. We proposed to split that cost 50-50, half of it with CPA funding, and the other half that Habitat would come up with the funding through their own fundraising as well as volunteer labor and gifts in kind they would get for equipment and parts and things like that. And the CPC agreed to that, the selectmen agreed to that, and in fact, that project was launched. It took between 2015 and 2019 for that all to be accomplished, but we had a very successful project. As part of the agreement to that, the Historic Commission and the Historic Society wanted an assurance that the exterior appearance of the old Gale General Store would not be modified as part of this project. The appearance from the street. Habitat agreed to that, and as you can see, the front of that building still looks very much like the Gale General Store used to look like back in the 1800s. So that was a successful project that reduced the amount of reserve funding we had from $500,000 to $450,000. So we proposed to the CPC in a number of subsequent years that we build that reserve back up So town meeting approved 100,000 in 2016, another 100,000 in 2017, another 100,000 in 2018, and another 100,000 in 150,000 in 2019. The sum of all that brought the reserve back up to $500,000. And that was the number we were working with. We'll talk for a minute about the 10% of the reserve since that time. But on the heels of that money being reserved, Habitat was able to get control of a condominium on Hitching Post Lane that was originally done as an affordable unit, but went into foreclosure. That particular unit had been refinanced in violation of the affordability deed on the project, but the bank was willing to donate that project to have that unit to Habitat at no cost. And Habitat came up with an estimate to renovate it and get an affordable family back in there, so we could basically keep that unit on our subsidized housing inventory. We proposed that the town provide $50,000 of affordable housing money out of the $500,000 that was sitting in the reserve, and the CPC and the Board of Selectmen at the time agreed to that. And so $50,000 was set aside to go towards the renovation of 24 Hitching Post Lane. As it turns out, that project was done under budget. It only cost $26,855.65 of community preservation money, and so $23,144.35 remained. The reason I bring that all up is that gives us a balance of affordable housing money remaining in reserve for the Housing Corporation to be used for future projects at $473,144.35. And you can see that listed in that section of the spreadsheet that says CPA funds available for NEHC use with CPC and Select Board approval, $473,144.35. So that's basically the sum of the 2016 through 2019 approvals and the balance left over from the $50,000 from 2015 that wasn't completely spent. In the meantime, because the town is required every year to set aside and either spend or reserve 10% of each year's community preservation money, in 2020, $62,663 was the 10% set aside for affordable housing. In 2021, $65,200 was set aside. In 2022, $75,000 was set aside. This year at town meeting, $77,000 was set aside. None of that money was set aside with the provision that it could be approved by the CPC or the selectmen. It's just a general reserve. And the money that was left behind from the project to do the 4 senior units at Center Drive, that was authorized specifically for that project. So once again, that would have to be reauthorized. So if you take the balance from the Center Drive project and the 4 years worth of 10% that was set aside, there's another $305,178.28 of additional affordable housing money in reserve that would need town meeting approval to be spent. Adding it all up right now, that means there's $778,322.63 in money in reserve for affordable housing. $473,144.35 can be approved by the CPC and selectmen. The other money needs town meeting approval. So that's kind of a quick history of what's going on. And I just want to stop here and see if there are any questions that we can answer about this money, where it came from, and the steps to approve it.
Lisa.
Just to go over it, I'm sure that people in the audience are looking at numbers, not the way we might do, because you should know our numbers. But just to reiterate, on the first grouping, it says available for NACHU, so 473,000 plus. That can be used at any time because it's already been approved and set aside, where the 305,000 has to go to town meeting to get that approval.
That's true.
Okay. So that this 473,000 can be used for whatever purchases you might find prior to a town meeting. That would fall into this amount of money. Okay.
So for example, the project we're going to propose tonight for 174 Boundary Street is a purchase where the executor of the estate has come to Habitat for Humanity and offered for them the ability to purchase that building. They're going to need an answer from Habitat fairly quickly within the next couple of weeks. And so this is an example of a chance here where we could approve a project without having to wait. If we had to wait for town meeting next year, the executive of the state would just sell that unit to someone else.
Right. So that's what you'd be using this money for, basically.
Yeah, so the 100,000 we're going to talk about in the next part would come out of this 473, 144.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions from the board? So just to follow up on what Lisa asked about, the 473 is available for appropriation by just the CPC and select board because town meeting has already appropriated it for this purpose, but held it back pending finding a good project that the CPC and select board would authorize, correct?
True. So the idea was that the warrant article specified the money would be set aside for future affordable housing and could be authorized with the approval of the CPC and the select board.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Okay.
All
any
right.
other questions?
Let's
If
move
not,
on. Any other questions?
I don't think there are any other questions. Ooh, yeah. Thanks.
All right. So let's move on then to the two projects. You've had a summary of each one. What I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about 174 Boundary Street first, and then talk about the project for future new affordable housing. If you could bring the map up, Mitch, that would be good.
Absolutely. Get this over here. All right. This is the map you wanted me to show, correct?
This is the map. Yep. Good.
Yep.
Thank you. So this is the town-owned land on Boundary Street. You can see where it says in red, future dog park. That's the westerly side of the property, and most of that town-owned land now is going to be used for the dog park. In the middle, you can see an area sort of cut off where it says 174 Boundary Street. That is no longer town-owned land. In 1992, the town authorized a warrant article to allow the town to dispose of that land. The town issued an RFP. Habitat for Humanity responded and was selected, and Habitat was given that, there were two lots there. They were given those lots for $1 each, and Habitat built 2 duplexes on that property. So that little area there is privately owned now by the 4 families who eventually were selected by Habitat and moved into that property. And 174 is the duplex to the left on the westerly side of the property. There were 2 units in 174 Boundary Street. There was a long-time mother and daughter who lived there. The mother passed away. Recently, the daughter is the executor of the estate. The daughter contacted Habitat and said that at the time they were looking for housing, her dad had passed away suddenly when she was young. They were struggling to find a decent place to live. And as she expressed it, the ability to find this unit of this from Habitat for Humanity at the price that was being offered was a godsend. And she always appreciated the fact that she was able to be in there, and she wanted to give Habitat the opportunity to repurchase the unit and to get another deserving income qualifying family in there the way she and her mom will take advantage of it. And basically, this is what Habitat does. They try and satisfy these kinds of needs. The unit was appraised at $350,000. At the time that this unit was built and completed in 1999, there wasn't strict rules for affordability restriction deeds on property. So the rule back then was that if this property came up for resale, while there was still an existing mortgage on the property, it would have to be offered at an affordable price. If the mortgage was satisfied, however, the unit could be offered at market price, and the mortgage on this property had been satisfied. So the $350,000 appraisal is the current appraised value of the property. If in fact Habitat acquires the property, they will sell it to a person at an income at a price which is appropriate for the income level of the person that is selected. So most likely this property will not sell for $350,000. It will sell for an affordable price. And Habitat at the time, when they sell it, will have an affordability deed restriction on the property so that in the future, it can only be sold as an affordable price. And Habitat will take some sort of a write down on the difference between what they pay for the unit and what they actually sell it to a low-income family for. And this is something that Habitat does on a fairly regular basis. I'll just stop for a minute and ask Hank to comment if I phrased that properly.
Yes, Rick, that's correct.
Okay, so that'll be kind of what happens here. So it's $350,000 is the price. As I think I said in the write-up, Michelle Gillespie, who's on our board, who's a local realtor, her opinion is that if this property went on the market, just on the open market, it would sell for well over $400,000. So we feel comfortable that the appraisal is appropriate. Habitat, Paul Ravello and his staff have been in the property, and there's a number of things they need to do to bring it up to speed to resell it. They've estimated about $50,000 in renovation costs. So if you take the $350,000 appraised purchase price and the $50,000 of renovation, it turns out to be about a $400,000 project for Habitat to turn this back around and sell it to a qualifying family. We had a meeting of our Housing Corporation Board with Habitat, as we always do before we propose anything to the town. The Housing Corporation Board was in favor of this project, and we felt that $100,000 of community preservation money was at a reasonable amount to dedicate towards this project. We then went to the CPC on the 13th of June and made this presentation. They agreed, and they agreed to fund $100,000 out of that $473,000 to the project. In your packet, you should have a letter from the CPC, from Lori, I think Connor's representing the CPC, indicating their approval. And so tonight, the Housing Corporation and Habitat asks for the Select Board's approval of this particular project. Now, what I want to do before we stop here and take questions is, if you'd like to get the total scope of the two projects together, I could give you the summary of the proposed project on the easterly side of the property, or we can stop here and talk about 174 Boundary Street. So Mitch, I'll leave that to you. How do you like to proceed?
Anybody want to stop and ask some questions about 174 at this time before we continue on? Laura, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think Lisa did as well.
Okay.
I'll go ahead.
Okay, so I have a quick question, Rick. So I know that the appraised value is $350,000. Has the seller agreed to that amount, or could they offer it at a lower amount or a higher amount?
I think at this point, the final negotiation hasn't happened. I think what Habitat said was that for them to make this viable, they're going to need some sort of community preservation support from the town. And so they hadn't committed. But once again, I'll turn to Hank. Are you aware of kind of where that stands at this point?
We have not executed a PNS with the seller, but I believe the seller has verbally agreed that they would sell it for the assessed valuation, but we don't have any legally binding PNS.
I think the assessed value is less than that, but I guess like between the appraisal, it's just more of a question if it comes in higher than the $350K that the appraisal came in at. I'm just wondering how that would impact this.
My understanding is that the executor, the daughter, had indicated to Habitat that she was willing to sell for the assessed value.
Is assessed the same as appraised?
Yeah, no.
I mean, not assessed, appraised value, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Appraised value and assessed value are different. Bob could speak to that, but the
No, I
appraised
understand.
value,
Yeah.
the appraised value is typically what property goes on the market for, or at least what realtors start to deal with when they price a piece of property, not the assessed value.
I think, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're saying is you're looking for $100,000 out of the money already appropriated by town meeting for this sort of project, and Habitat will kick in whatever the difference is to meet the purchase price as negotiated with the seller, which is anticipated to be in the range of 350 total.
That's true. So the town's commitment would be 100,000 that would go towards the purchase. And Habitat is assuming the purchase price should be 350,000 at this point.
Lisa.
Okay, so some of my question is that when you are partnering with Habitat, and clearly they're more invested financially than we are in this, how does that partnership work? So, well, how does that partnership work? I'll ask the next question after that.
So the partnership is basically, we advocate for Habitat. We present the project to the town. We work with the Community Preservation Commission. If in fact the project is approved and reimbursements need to be made, Habitat submits invoices to us after they've been paid. We verify them. We work with the town accountant to get reimbursement. Typically, the reimbursement money flows from the town to us, and we send the money back to Habitat. So we don't have any interest in ownership, nor do we do any work on the project. We basically are the go-between between Habitat and the town of Northborough.
Okay, so that's kind of interesting because I didn't realize that you were just kind of the go-between. So and this one's a simpler one than the next one we're going to talk about. So basically what you're saying is we donate $100,000 toward a piece of property that Habitat will buy and own, that will pay taxes to us, I'm assuming. And
Habitat will eventually transfer ownership to a selected family, and they will become the owners and they will pay the property tax.
Okay. And well, so you said that. Now I forgot the end of that sentence. So yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's all.
And the benefit to the town is that right now this unit is not on the subsidized housing inventory. So once Habitat completes this project and sells the unit to a qualifying family and puts the deed restriction on the property, our subsidized housing industry will increase by 1 unit for this property. So we're getting, for the $100,000, besides getting a deserving family into a unit, we're also getting another unit on the SHI.
And I really am glad that we can do that and offer that to a needy family. How does it go once they own it? How does it go into our percentage? Because when they own it outright, we really don't have, it's not like a rental.
Yeah, so what's going to happen is Habitat is going to file paperwork with the town and with the State Department of Housing to indicate that this unit has been sold by lottery to a qualifying low-income family. That paperwork will then indicate that this unit qualifies to go on the subsidized housing inventory, and the State Department of Housing will add it to the inventory. So Habitat will work with the state to get this unit on the inventory.
Okay, and last question on that. What is considered the better price for this affordable unit? Like, will they sell it for under 400,000 to make it affordable? Or will they sell it at invariably 400,000 and up for a family who could actually afford that?
Yeah, I think what'll happen will be, depending on the income of the qualifying family, the price and the mortgage payment will be set based on that. It will most likely be significantly under this price. But Hank, once again, you can comment on that.
Yeah, Habitat routinely takes substantial affordability write-offs on the properties that they sell. Because to get the house, our policy is to sell for less than fair market value. It ranges anywhere from 40% to 80% of fair market value, and it depends on family size and things of that sort. But we do take we take a loss on every property we build. That's one of the reasons why we're a nonprofit.
Well, thank you very much. I applaud what you're doing, and we can move on.
Laura, I saw your hand up again.
Hi, thank you. And I'm so grateful for all the work that you're doing for this project. Does Habitat help the new families when they do move to town get acclimated? Is there like a process in place for them to just familiarize with everything in Northborough?
We do have some staff that does family relationship management. We ask the families who buy our properties to participate in the work involved in renovating the property. We call it sweat equity. So the family will spend it's 400 to 800 hours of sweat equity on the property. And we also usually ask, we offer the families opportunities to go to financial training and first new homeowner training to help them with the property. And we provide a one-year warranty on a property itself. So we provide substantial support after the folks move in.
And if there's people in Northborough that want to participate, is there some type of a volunteer sign up, or how would people get involved?
Yes, well, we love to have, we'll do a great deal of community organizing, and a lot of our volunteer labor will come from the community. We will also invite corporate groups to come as intact groups for team building activities, and the corporate groups end up subsidizing the cost of the project. We usually invite intact church groups also.
Thank you.
I would just comment, Laura, that on this project being a renovation of an existing property, the number of hours spent will be less than new construction. So there'll be volunteer work involved, and there'll be sweat equity, but this particular project will be smaller in scope than, say, what we're going to talk about next.
Christian?
Hi, thanks. Yeah. So yes, I'm really happy that you're doing this work too. I think maybe the point Laura was getting at is there some sort of liaison to Northborough moms groups and other kinds of Northborough organizations that the people who move in might want to join? So it sounds like there's probably not. So maybe you could just let them know that they can always reach out to us, and we will be happy to connect them to various groups in town, depending on what their interests are and whether or not they have kids. And also, if they have kids, they're going to be connected, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. We certainly will do that.
Sure.
One thing we could do, Kristen, is if you or anyone would like to send me information about groups that would be good for these people to get involved with, and contacts, I can sort of put that all together and send that back to Metro West Greater Worcester Habitat, and they can start to work on that.
Okay, that's great. Maybe we can brainstorm. Maybe that can be one of our goals. We can brainstorm, since this house has a ways to go, right? You don't even know who these people are yet, right?
We have not selected a family. We will go through a marketing process. We will hold a number of public meetings in the community. We'll invite people from the community to apply to be homeowners and to meet the Department of Housing and Community Development requirements. We will actually select a family based on a lottery.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. We'll work on that.
Julianne?
Yes, so first of all, I want to thank Rick for all of the information that you provided. It was really great to read the history and all that, the accounting and everything. But in past discussions about affordable housing, you have talked about deeds in perpetuity versus like a time limited one. But maybe you already mentioned this. What is this going to be, a deed in perpetuity? And maybe I'm confused about that anyway.
I'm going to say yes, but I'll let Hank confirm that.
Yes, to get we will go through what the Department of Housing and Community Development calls a local action unit application process, and that will when we transfer the property to the eventual homeowner, there will be a deed rider that makes the property affordable in perpetuity. If at some time in the future the family wants to sell the property, they have to offer it back to Habitat and the community at a fixed at a price that's based on the original purchase price plus an escalator for cost of living increases in the meantime. So we have the right to repurchase it and it must be resold to another family who meets the affordability criteria.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I love this story. That there was a family in need due to the death of a husband and a father a number of years ago. Mother and daughter move into this house because they were in need, and you were able to help them out then. And then decades later, the daughter, as an adult, certainly has the ability, because of the rules that were in place then, has the ability now to sell it for market rate and not go through Habitat at all, and just take what I think a lot of people would do, is just bank the money. But instead is willing to work with Habitat, I think wants to work with Habitat to give some future family, the same benefits that she went through as a young child and growing up. So it's just a great story. I'm, very hopeful the board will be supportive of this.
Okay, so
I don't know if there. Go ahead, Rick.
If you'd rather hear out the second project before you vote on either one, we can do that just to get an idea of the total sum of what we're talking about here for.
I think it's a good idea. So why don't you move on to the proposed duplex project as it is listed on the map here?
Yep. Okay, so I've had my eye on this Boundary Street property for years and years and years. When Kathy Jubert was the town planner, I said, if someday the town starts talking about doing something with this property, I'd be interested in getting involved with someone. Just a couple acres could make a big difference as far as affordable housing goes. And it was always, the town had really made no decision to ever do anything with it, and so nothing ever happened. When I heard that the dog park was going down there, I jumped right back in, talked to Kathy and then to Lori when she came on board and said, this would be a great opportunity to create a little more affordable housing in town at a very appropriate place on the rest of this property here. So Debbie Maruka Hoke is the name of the executive director of Greater Worcester, of Metro West Greater Worcester Habitat for Humanity. She and I and Lori met. We talked about this property. I think Paul and his people came down here and walked around on it. We're talking about 86,000 square feet of available land down here on the easterly side of the property. And as you can see in the back, you can see those elevation markers. The land starts to slope up back there, but Habitat's estimate is about 60,000, give or take, square feet of this property that's usable to create more housing. And it's definitely doable in that part of that front part of that property that's usable. There's, I think it's 282 feet of frontage on the property, which is appropriate for one duplex unit, but it's not appropriate for anything more than that. The property, just in its land area itself, could support 3 duplexes and 6 units, but there's no Northborough water and sewer on Boundary Street going by here. So if in fact septic and wells are going to have to be put in, it's going to limit the amount of usable land for creation of buildings. It turns out the city of Marlborough does have water and sewer going by here. And Debbie Maruka Hoke had a discussion with the DPW director in Marlborough, who she has some experience with, and the mayor in Marlborough, about the possibility, if this project went forward, of connecting to the Marlborough water and sewer and not having to do private well and septic here, which would then make all of the land available for a larger project. And the response she got from Marlborough was they need some indication from the town of Northborough that they're in support, at least philosophically, of this project. And if the town of Northborough is supportive, then the DPW and mayor will make a final determination about whether they would, in fact, agree to allow a connection from this land to their water and sewer. Basically, Habitat feels they can do 1 duplex with 2 units with private water and sewer with the existing frontage as just kind of a by right project. They feel that they can probably do 2 duplexes with some creative planning for private septic and water. It doesn't seem likely that 3 duplexes could be done if septic and wells have to be done here, but enough detail work hasn't been done yet to really understand what would happen here. So we're talking about something between 2 and 6 units in 1 to 3 duplexes kind of being the potential project. And obviously, a lot more work is going to have to go into figuring out exactly what's going to happen based on what Marlborough says. And then also, if we're going to do more than 2 units on the property, even if Marlborough doesn't agree, there's either going to have to be a friendly 40B done to get around the 280 feet frontage issue or a variance from the ZBA. Typically, the friendly 40Bs is a more streamlined way to do it. It also gets the State Department of Housing involved early on in the project. They give their blessing and approval, which means that once the project is complete and the affordability restriction deed, the affordability restriction, the deeds are put in place, the units automatically go into the subsidized housing inventory. So most likely what would be proposed here, if in fact we can do more than 1 duplex, would be a proposal to do what's called the local initiative project, where the town would agree to work with the state on a 40B to get more than 1 duplex on the property. But once again, exactly how that would work will be dependent on what can be done in more detailed work down the road. So what we need tonight is to be able to indicate to the city of Marlborough that the town of Northborough supports this project. As I said in my write-up, this does not mean that the select board is giving any sort of final approval to this. The select board would not have the ability to transfer the property to Habitat for Humanity without town meeting approval. And there would need to be probably more community preservation money spent than what's going to be left of the 473, or let's say it's going to be 373, if in fact the board agrees to the 174 project. So there's really going to have to be a warrant article or a series of warrant articles at town meeting in 2024 to approve this. But obviously, before that happened, the Housing Corporation and Habitat would come back to the CPC and present the detailed project and the detailed cost estimate and make a request for certain CPC funding. Then we schedule a meeting with the select board, if the CPC was in agreement, to do a detailed review of the project and the amount of CPA money that would be allocated. And then if in fact the select board continued to be in agreement, then we would work with the town to draft either a warrant article or multiple warrant articles that would ask the town to go ahead and approve some number of affordable units on this property to be determined once all the detailed work is done. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of what this project is all about. Paul, anything you want to add from your perspective?
No, I think good overview, Rick. Exactly, we can get 2 units on there pretty readily, given the space and the frontage that's there, but we want to try to maximize the land. I mean, it's over 2 acres, so we could probably easily get to 4 units, but we're short 18 feet. The property is short 18 feet of frontage in order to do that. And then if Marlborough allows us to tie into water and sewer, then we could probably get 6 units on the property and everything would work.
I think it's important to understand that Habitat is interested in doing something on this land, be it 2, 4, or 6. So even if Marlborough comes back and says that they're not going to allow a connection to the sewer system, if in fact tonight the select board indicates initial support for the project, we will come back with a project of someplace between 2 and 4 units and as many as 6, but only 6 if Marlborough is supportive also. So with that, the floor is open to comments and questions.
Questions from the board? I think I saw Lisa, then Laura, then Julianne.
Okay, so I've quite a few questions. First off, what is the actual value of this land as it sits now? Do we know what that is?
I have no idea.
All right, so
It's town-owned land, so it doesn't have a formal assessed value.
Okay, but there's a value to it. So that value that is going to be placed on it is part of our contribution, as well as what we would put in for CPC money. We are intending, if I'm not mistaken, to use all of CPC money to build 2 to 4 units.
It'll be, the CPC money will not be sufficient to do the whole project. So I think I indicated in the information I gave you that the cost of the project could range, assuming that the property is donated or provided to Habitat at a minimal cost. The estimate to do the project ranges anywhere from 800,000 to 2.5 million. And the CPC contribution, we typically fund 50%. Once again, we'd have to discuss that with the CPC and with the select board. So we're just estimating that the CPA contribution could range anywhere from 400,000 to $1 million, depending on how many units could be built, what the CPC agrees to, and what the select board agrees to. So ballpark, 800,000 to 2.5 million to do the project, and a CPA contribution of once again, these are all rough numbers, estimating 400,000 to $1 million.
Okay, so that would be ours. Habitat would take up the balance.
Yes.
Habitat would then own it.
Habitat would own it until they conducted the lotteries, selected the families, and then there would be 2, 4, or 6 families that would become the owners of those condominiums in those duplexes.
Okay. And one of the questions I'd like to know is if one of these units, if there's 2 or 4, I'm going to say 2 duplexes, that they would be at least a handicapped accessible one that's built specifically for people with handicapped needs.
I'll let Habitat, I don't think that'd be an issue, but Paul or Hank, would there be any problem with making sure we have
Habitat has in the past built fully handicap accessible units. All of the units that we build are so-called handicap visitable, i.e. we put in, wide doors and someone who's handicapped can visit. We also design the units to support aging in place. So we could make some of the units handicap accessible. We could also exercise under the current state regulations. We could exercise some local preference. 25% of the units could be preferentially given to folks who are currently either resident in or employees of the town of Northborough.
So that's good to know, because I think people just assume that it's all Northborough, and it's not all Northborough.
No.
And again, handicapped accessibility is fine, but there are a lot of people who need a place to live, and they'd like to live in town. They probably have families in town, and I think that would be a great thing to have there. I would also say that I would also question, because we're donating the land, is there a tax credit like you would have gotten in another situation that can go to the town for donating the value of the land?
I'll defer to Bob Reed on that.
I don't think so. We don't pay taxes.
And Habitat doesn't pay taxes also.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the value of the land could have what I can't remember the right name of it, but it's a tax something. What is it? Bob, you can probably help me out on that.
You mean a write-off? I don't see where we would be able to get any tax benefit from this. We don't. I don't see a vehicle where we would do this. We don't pay taxes.
I mean the town doesn't pay taxes on the land. Is that what you're saying?
I don't see a vehicle where we would be able to get a tax break on this. There are no taxes to apply the credit to.
Okay. And then my last remark would be just give the room for other people to talk. When I hear that there's only an 18-foot frontage shortage, I'd much rather go to the ZBA for a variance than to go 40B friendly. I think that's kind of an overkill. So that's my questions for that so far. Thank you.
Okay, just one question for Hank and to Paul about that. If in fact this is not done as a friendly 40B, there's still a vehicle to get the units on the SHI?
Yes.
Yes, there is.
Okay, the main thing
Uh,
I want to make sure is that all these units end up on the SHI. Okay,
Everything that Habitat builds goes on the SHI for the communities we build in.
okay.
Thanks, Lisa. Laura, I believe you were next.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I definitely would prefer to avoid friendly 40B. So if there's anything that we can work on from a town meeting process or ZBA process to avoid that, I would prefer that. And then if there's any preference, I know that there's definitely a lot of people in Northborough that would like the ability to age in place. So I love the local preference. If there's specifications to make for senior residents, I would love anything that we can do to help some of our long-standing residents have a type of housing unit to downsize to that is affordable. It would definitely solve a gap in our housing inventory for those folks.
That's a good point, Laura. At our board meeting with Habitat, we talked about appropriateness to seniors. That's something we're going to work on. If we go forward with this, we're going to try and see how some of these units could be set up to be senior appropriate.
Thank you. Oh, last question. So can the selectmen join you in these meetings, or would that be inappropriate?
In which meetings?
The Northborough Affordable Housing Corp, when you're meeting with Habitat for Humanity, just to hear, like, this is a big project, so I would love just to hear more of the process that's involved in this project, because it will definitely be a big one. It's a big financial project that we'll be looking at into the future.
Yeah, what we can do is, if in fact the select board indicates support for this project, Habitat will go off and start to do the detailed planning and engineering work. And then they'll schedule meetings with the Housing Corporation Board to review where we are. At that point, through Mitch, I can let you know when those meetings are going to be, and if people from the board, from the select board would like to sit in on those meetings and listen to the discussions and provide input, certainly there'd be no problem with that. Once again, I'm speaking as the treasurer of the board on behalf of the rest of the board, but I can't imagine that would be a problem. If in fact tomorrow I get a bunch of angry emails, if they want to do it differently, I'll get back to you. But for now, let's just assume that as Habitat meets with the Housing Corporation to talk about the project, we'll make the select board aware of those meetings.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Okay, we typically meet in my living room, so I can just bring extra cookies.
Julianne?
Okay, two quick questions. One is, if this all goes smoothly and the duplexes are approved, does the design go before design review?
So yes, we could do a review with the town on the plans to build and make sure that everybody's on board with the kind of the zoning limitations and what we intend to build.
That's great. And my second question is just about the process of all of this. This is, this is a project in a neighborhood, and is there some way that we should notify the neighbors and at least make them aware that this is happening?
Yeah, what we've done in the past, like when we did the Main Street projects, once that was approved, we worked through the planning department, and notification was given, especially the fact that, if we're going to do a zoning variance, we're going to have to go before the zoning board. That's a public meeting. But there's other information we can provide to the abutting neighborhood to let them know that, something is happening here. So within the confines of what we're allowed to do or what the town is allowed to do, we'll definitely communicate to the abutting neighborhood that there's something going on. But we won't do that until we're further down the road here to know if we actually have a project we're going to do.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions from the board? I will say that similar to the other one, I really like this project. It's consistent with the area. Of course, there are already these two duplexes that we talked about in the 174 range here. This would be right next to it. I think there's another single family home over there. So these are, my assumption is, and my ask is, these would not be the giant duplexes that have been built, over the last decade or so. You're looking to keep these affordable. They would be, they would be appropriate for the site. I think this is a really good initiative. It's a good use of this town land now that we're already divvying a lot of it off for the dog park. As for friendly 40B versus ZBA variance, from my perspective, it doesn't matter. Whatever is overall easier for everyone all involved. My suggestion is assuming that this goes further, is somebody put together, a pro and con for each approach. Ask the zoning board for their input as to, whether they want to be formally part of the process with the variance, or whether they prefer to go that and ask staff, of course, and then we can go back and revisit that and make that decision later. We don't need to make that decision tonight. I love the idea of local preference where we can. I love the idea of handicap accessibility where we can. And I am hopeful, I'll cross fingers and toes, that the city of Marlborough will work with us and work with you primarily in Habitat to allow water and sewer connection right there. Obviously, their sewer plant is almost across the street from this location. So it's not very far. And so, on the assumption that they have ample supply to provide into that, hopefully they'll help out, not to help out the town of Northborough, but to help out the future residents of that neighborhood.
Just two comments. One, Habitat has a standard plan that we build as many times as we can. That's our preference. So, you're not going to have an ostentatious building on the site. It's simple, decent, affordable housing is what we strive to provide.
Fantastic. Thank you. Lisa, I think I saw your hand go up.
When we go to make the motion on this one, the other one's fine. I'm not comfortable with friendly 40B, so I'd like to make sure that we make a letter that's a little bit more specific. Are we making a letter to Marlborough saying that we're in support of having a couple of houses from Habitat for Humanity, and that's the vagueness of the letter? Or I'd like to see the letter before it gets signed and sent in.
I think we're probably months away from making a decision on friendly 40B versus zoning.
But I'm saying for this letter to Marlborough, basically, they don't have to, that's not a part of what their letter.
Correct.
Right.
All right, but I would still like to see what.
I'm sorry. The letter just has to indicate that the town of Northborough is in support of this project.
Okay, well.
We could even say pending, future review and all that kind of stuff.
All right, but just a little bit more detail in of this project. I'd rather have a little bit more detail on the letter, just to try to.
Yeah, this is, the proposed motion even says pending final review of the detailed project plan and cost estimates prior to the 2024 annual town meeting.
Still pretty vague.
Yeah, it leaves it very open-ended because I know the Affordable Housing Corp and Habitat don't want to spend any more time on this if we were opposed to the project. So they want to know, broadly speaking, are we in favor? And then they'll do months worth of homework, and then they will come back, I assume, probably in the January timeframe, and give us an update and ask us to make some further decisions at that stage.
I think our time frame will be, the CPC typically starts holding hearings in November, December. So I talked to Debbie at Habitat, asked her if they could be ready for something to present to the CPC in that November, December timeframe, and she said she thought they could. And then bending on what they say, I agree, we'd be back early in 2024 before the select board. One other thing I'll add, we talked about those funding agreements. So if in fact 174 Boundary Street is approved tonight, the $100,000, the next step will be for me to draft a funding agreement for that project, indicating the $100,000, indicating it's going to go to offset the purchase price, and getting that draft to Bob and to Habitat and to our lawyer. And Bob will review that with the town council, give any comments or changes, and we'll finalize that funding agreement. And then when that funding agreement is finalized, the town accountant gets a copy of that And then when I request the reimbursement of the money, the 100,000 that comes off of that funding agreement. And obviously, if in fact the other project on Boundary Street is approved at town meeting next year, there'd be a fairly significant funding agreement that'll be written that'll cover that one. So every time the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation is approved to get community preservation money, a funding agreement is set up between NEHC and the town, and that's not any different than any other privates. You know, the Historic Society has had historic community preservation monies sent to it for work on their building over there, and funding agreements were developed for all of that. So it's a stated process. Whenever a non-town entity gets community preservation money, a funding agreement is executed between the private entity and the town.
Julianne, did you have a question?
Oh, I do. Thank you. So I've been thinking about Lisa's question and the tax credit. So maybe we wouldn't get a tax credit, but I mean, this is a town asset that we're donating. And I wonder if it's worth asking Department of Housing, DHC, or even the lawyer, if there's some acknowledgement we get for donating the property.
I think we get a nice thank you note.
Okay.
I don't think
Well,
there's
that's
anything more to it than that.
Well, the town gets 4 more units on the SHI.
Yeah.
And you get 4 more taxpayers.
One last question.
Yeah,
Since
sure.
we're putting them in together. So the 174 unit on Boundary Street,
Yep.
can that be preferred Northborough resident, since it is a Northborough resident?
I think with
Because
one
it's a,
unit, you can't do local preference on a one-unit project. Is that right, Hank?
yeah, but, there's a minimum of 2 units to do local preference. So we can't do local preference on the single unit.
All right.
We'll
Right.
make sure though that it's when Habitat advertises that a lottery is going to be conducted for this unit and people can submit applications, we'll make sure that that's posted in prominent places in Northborough.
Okay, great, because I know we want to keep our Northborough families here, and it is our Northborough tax dollars, so we'd love to keep the families here.
That was a good question, Lisa. I had another question, whether it be for Bob or I see DPW Director Scott Charpentier is on the line, as to just to confirm that the town has no future use for the part of the parcel that we're discussing here. We're not giving up on any future need.
I'm not aware of it. I mentioned it to the town planner. She's well aware of it, and the reviews that it would have to go through. I'm not aware of any plans that have been brought to my attention.
Sure.
This parcel of land is owned by the general fund. The sewer division owns the Heitzman property, which is up gradient and abuts Main Street. So as long as that sliver you see just north and west of 174 Boundary Street, right there, thank you, remains town ownership. It provides us access to Boundary Street. Sewer division has no concerns with this.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa.
Just because I can't, when I'm looking at the map where it says proposed duplex project, is that going to come back in almost like a rectangle coming back to where the green dotted line is, or what's the actual?
Yeah, if you look back, Lisa, you can start to see some elevation changes. You can see it gets pretty steep right there. So it's going to go back. That's about as far back as it can go.
Okay.
That's why they talked about 60,000 square feet of the 86,000 square feet is usable, and that stuff in the back there, it's at an elevation that makes it unusable.
Okay, but it's basically that whole rectangular piece though that goes back to the dotted green line, right?
I think it does, yes.
L shape behind 174.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where, if you go behind 174, where that boundary is, but it's basically going to be, the project is going to be done kind of following the blue line just below 174 Boundary Street, just extend that back to that elevation change. The project is going to happen in that space there. Is that right, Paul?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So it's going to be like a rectangular shape. It's not going to go over behind 174 Boundary Street.
And I want to thank you for giving us the time. I know we've been asking a lot of questions, but that gets to be our little MO so that we can get more information out to the general public. And I appreciate you giving us all the information you have.
Yep, no problem.
Are there any further questions before I unshare the map? Get into decision making. Okay. All right. Any other questions? So there are two requests before us tonight from the Affordable Housing Corp. One is on $100,000 for 174, and then the other is on a sort of general interest in the larger project that we've talked about before, which I was told described currently as Zero Boundary Street because it doesn't have an address because there's nothing on it yet. Any other questions before I ask for motions? Okay. The first one we have in our order is the general project, which would be to approve the creation of affordable housing on the town-owned land with some technical details, again, pending final review and town meeting approval later. Would someone like to make that motion?
I move the board vote to approve the creation of new affordable housing on town-owned land, further described as Zero Boundary Street, map 31, parcel 9, pending final review of the detailed project plan and cost estimates prior to the 2024 annual town meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Kristen, seconded by Julianne. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Kristen?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. You have project number one. Is there a motion on the next item? This is the $100,000 for the 174 that we talked about at the beginning part of this discussion.
Mr. Chair, I move the board to vote to approve a funding agreement with the Northborough Affordable Housing Corp., NAHC, in the amount of $100,000 to create and support affordable housing located at 174 Boundary Street, as further specified in a letter of support dated June 14th, 2023, from the Community Preservation Committee and pursuant to Article 38 of the 2016 Annual North Town Meeting, and to authorize the interim town administrator to execute the same.
Second.
Motion made by Laura, seconded by Julianne. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Laura?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. You've got your
Thank you very-
project.
Thank
Now
you
you have
very
some work
much.
to do,
We
Rick.
appreciate you listening and your support. We'll do great projects for you.
Great. Thank you for the very detailed explanation on all of this, both the individual projects as well as the process as a whole. As you indicated, the current membership of this board has not dealt with this before, so it was very helpful.
And Bob, I will start to draft a funding agreement for 174 Boundary Street. I'll get that to you when I return from my vacation.
Okay, Rick, thanks.
Okay. Once again, thank you all very much. And also to the Habitat people here tonight, thank you for joining. It was very helpful.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to our next agenda item, we have Facilities Manager Sean Thompson to talk about the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. Sean, I know you're waiting in the wings here.
Mr. Chair, we also have Tim and Jenny from DAC, the accessibility consultants, waiting for entry. And I think Jenny will need to share screen.
And Jeannie, I'm looking. There we go. Oop. Owen and I are fighting on getting people in, so thank you, Owen. And Tim, if you'd like to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you'd like. And And then either Scott or Sean, if you could introduce our guests.
Certainly. Scott Charpentier, DPW Director. I have with me Sean Thompson, the Facility Manager, and Tim Mahoney and Jenny Grover from DAC. We engaged DAC to conduct a self-evaluation and transition plan in accordance with the American with Disability Act requirements. And I believe Jenny has a PowerPoint presentation she would like to go through, after which there'll be time for questions. Jenny, I think you have share screen capabilities, but I'm not sure.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
All right, may I proceed?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. First, we want to, from DAC, thank you for the opportunity to allow us to present the project overview for the ADA Self-Evaluation and Transition Plan. I'm Jenny Grover. I'm the Director of Administrative Services for DAC. And then also on the presentation today, we also have Tim Mahoney, our General Manager, who is also representing Disability Access Consultants. So first we want to introduce ourselves because we're not sure if everyone on the board is familiar with Disability Access Consultants. So DAC was founded in 1998 by Barbara Thorpe, our president of DAC, so it's a woman-founded company. We have provided ADA self-evaluation and transition plans for over 400 public entities nationwide in the past 25 years. So that results in about 28,000 buildings surveyed, some thousands of parks and outdoor recreational facilities, and over 30,000 miles of public rights-of-way that we've surveyed. We've also performed hundreds of program reviews and evaluations to study the accessibility of programs, services, and activities for public entities. We have developed a DACTRAC accessibility intake and management software. That is a two-part software that our staff uses in the field to collect information about the assets of the town. And then also that's a management software that the town uses to be able to implement the transition plan. So it's a two-part software. So the DAC team that has been working with the town of Northborough has over 100 years of combined experience in developing ADA and self-evaluation transition plans. Tim has been with DAC for about 12 years, and I'm coming up on my 16-year anniversary with DAC. So just to go over a little background of why this project was done in the first place. So the Civil Rights Law, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 kind of started this all. So Section 504 says that no qualified individual with a disability in the United States shall be excluded from or denied the benefits of or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity that receives federal financial assistance. So if there's any pass-through funding that the town receives from the federal government, then the town is also required to abide by Section 504 and provide non-discriminatory programs. So a few years went by, and in 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act was also signed into law. And that expands a little bit on the Section 504. It has 5 titles under the ADA. Title 2 is the premise of the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan that we provided to the town. Title 2 is for state and local government activities. And that says that all activities of state and local governments, regardless of the government's entity size or receipt of federal funding, are required to offer people with disabilities an opportunity, equal opportunity to benefit from their programs, services, and activities. And the ADA also includes some architectural standards for new construction and alteration of public entity buildings. Now, Massachusetts also has some state regulations that are related to accessibility, and we have the Massachusetts Executive Order 526. And how that applies is that it states that all programs, activities, and services provided, performed, and funded by the state shall be conducted without unlawful discrimination on the basis of many protected classes, with disability being one of those protected classes. So an ADA self-evaluation and transition plan is a legal responsibility from the town. And it's also a sign of goodwill that you want to ensure that anyone with a disability has equal opportunity to participate in your programs and services. So we move into the development of the plan to remove physical and programmatic barriers over time. So that's your transition plan. And then also to remove any potential discriminatory practices that may have been uncovered during the evaluation. So a project overview of the full ADA self-evaluation and transition plan included two parts. The first is the ADA evaluation, and that includes determining and assuring that the ADA and 504 coordinator for the town is noticed and posted, because that is a requirement under the ADA. You have to have someone with responsibility for ADA in the town. The law of the ADA for a self-evaluation also includes an opportunity for the public to give feedback. So that is the public input process into the self-evaluation and to help implement the transition plan. Under the ADA, the town is also required to have a grievance procedure. So that means that if anyone who feels that they were discriminated against or didn't have access to a program in an equal fashion, they have somewhere to go within the town to file a grievance before they would go to the Department of Justice. So it's the first step in trying to resolve something. The self-evaluation also included a review of notices and postings that are requirements for the town. One of the notices is called the notice under the ADA. It's also known as the notice of rights afforded to persons with disabilities. It basically says that the town does not discriminate in the programs. It also includes contact information for the ADA coordinator if you have a request for an accommodation or if you have a grievance. And then we also look for statements of accommodation. So if someone does want to take advantage of the services and the programs that the town uses and offers, and they need an accommodation, is there information on how that person can contact the right person at the town? And then is there also a time frame for which someone should contact the town so that the town does have an opportunity to provide that reasonable accommodation? So after the self-evaluation is done, we move into the transition plan. So while we're doing the evaluation of all of your programs, policies, and procedures, we also had staff that physically in town that were taking measurements and taking photographs of all of your assets, of the as-is conditions, to identify any barriers to accessibility, anything that is not in compliance with the architectural standards of the ADA or the Massachusetts state codes. The transition plan also requires that there is a method to remove the barriers. So in addition to identifying any barriers, you need to say, how can I possibly fix this? How can I remove that? So that's a part of the transition plan. And then another requirement is to have a schedule of barrier removal over time, because when you see all of the barriers and deficiencies that were found in the evaluations, you'll see that it can't all be done overnight. Nothing can be fixed overnight. The town doesn't have enough staff, they don't have enough money, and you can't stop time. So it is going to have to be over probably a decade or longer to remove all of those barriers. But the town did start this process quite a while ago. Last year, there was an application for a planning grant provided to the Massachusetts Office on Disability, and I believe that was done in August of last year. So even though we're at the tail end and it might be new to everybody, the staff of the town has been working on this for quite a while. So a little bit about the project and scope overview. So we had the kickoff meeting. Like I mentioned, this started in August of last year, but finally when the grant was approved and provided to the town, we really began the hard work of making sure that we have all the information about the town's assets and facilities so that we could have our feet on the ground as soon as basically the snow thawed. So we had our kickoff meeting back in February of 2023, so just about 4 months ago. So the barrier assessment actually took place in April and May of 2023, and that included the assessment of all of the town's facilities, parks, and public rights of way. Now, at the same time, we were also doing the ADA self-evaluation of the programs and policies. We call it the programmatic review. So we looked for anything that was public-facing policies, programs, procedures, and forms. We also assisted the town with coordinating the public outreach, and we also did a website accessibility evaluation because as of today, there still is no law under the ADA that says the website has to be accessible. There's no requirement for that, but there is a requirement for effective communication, and that is where that falls. So we also have the transition plan development, and that is the proposed timelines for barrier removal. So DAC has provided the town with the results of the ADA self-evaluation of all of the policy, well, we did the policies and the procedures, and then also the physical assets, the public rights of way, the parks, and the buildings. And now the town is working on a proposed timeline for barrier removal to implement the transition plan. And that moves into number 5, which is the project database and management. I was mentioning the DAC software, so that is something that our surveyors use when they're out of the site. It is also a software that the town has access to, the town staff has access to, and is able to use that software to project your dates of barrier removal and manage your transition plan. And another deliverable that we provided to the city, the town, is the self-evaluation and transition plan executive summary, which memorializes the project in its entirety, and then it also provides the results of the programmatic evaluation that we did for the town. So as a project summary, again, we did the surveys of facilities, parks, and public rights-of-way. That was all included in the agreement. We did the review of the policies, programs, services, and activities. We assisted the town with the required public input. We have done the DAC access and training, and we also provided the town with the executive summary so that you know what you're spending your money on. And the deliverables, again, are really in 2 overall pieces. The executive summary report that includes the findings and recommendations from the programmatic policy and procedure review. There's also 2 addendums that are attached to the executive summary, and that is the compilation of all of the public input that was provided and collected from the community members, the public, and also the town staff, and the evaluation of the town's website. And then we also have the DAC access for town staff, and that includes all the findings and recommendations from the physical site surveys, and also the town will be assigning estimated dates of barrier removal and determining the priorities to implement the barrier removal, implementing the transition plan. So just to kind of give you an overview from the top of the mountain of the findings that DAC uncovered whenever we took all of the as-is conditions of the town's assets, and why we say transition plans cannot be done overnight. You cannot remove all of your barriers overnight. So this is going to be something that has to be planned out over time by the town staff. Just a quick summary of the non-compliant findings by category in the public rights-of-way. You can see from this chart that for sidewalks alone, there were over 2,500 non-compliant items that were uncovered. And so sidewalks, those would include any changes of elevation that are not in compliance with the ADA or the related accessibility codes. It may also be sidewalks that are too narrow. It could also be protruding objects, maybe mailboxes or utility boxes in the sidewalk. And then also items that may hang over the sidewalk and cause an issue with vertical access as well. So you could have guy wires from telephone poles. You may have trees or other vegetation that's hanging over the sidewalk. That would be included in the sidewalk non-compliant findings. Curb ramps we also have here as a separate category, so that would include the side flares, if there's truncated domes on there, so those would be included in the curb ramps. And then we also have a few findings for path of travel, reach ranges, and signage in the public rights of way. Now, I also have a similar chart to kind of give you a good overview, from the 10,000 foot overview of the non-compliant findings that were uncovered by category for buildings, facilities, and parks. And you can see here again, there's a lot of items that the town should take care of over the next decade or so, building those into your transition plan. Just for doors alone, you can see that there are 602 non-compliant findings. So that doesn't mean that there's actually 602 doors in the town, because there could be more than one reason that a door is non-compliant. And with the DAC Track software that's been provided to the town, they can drill down and see all of the reasons why a doorway is not compliant. So it could be inaccessible hardware, as well as the width of the door, the threshold of the door. So in that information, so when the town is building projects to renovate areas, you have all of the information available to you about everything that is non-compliant. So you could build that into your plans. Then we can talk about public outreach. Again, that is a requirement for a complete ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. And the town did a great job of getting the word out that you were collecting information from, and comments from the community members and town staff. So this is just a little word cloud to say these are the highest comments that were given: town sidewalks, accessible buildings, better parking, ADA access. So we'll talk a little bit more about the public outreach here. So we'll talk about the actual, the method to collect the information. So the public outreach took place from May 1st to May 31st of 2013, so all of last month. And the town did provide multiple and comprehensive opportunities for the public, community members, and staff using several methodologies, and those included surveys that were available for the public, community members, and then also a separate survey that was provided to staff to kind of get a snapshot of any gap analysis that the staff may have, not understanding the requirements of the ADA or how to provide accessible programs. Information requesting input from the public and community members regarding the town's ADA self-evaluation and transition plan update was posted on the town's website. A link to respond to an online survey for the public was also placed on the town's website. And an announcement of the opportunity for public input was made at the May 1st, 2023 Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee meeting. So just a quick summary of the number of the responses that the town received. You can see the survey for public input. It did get 49 online responses and 1 response in a hard copy. So 50 responses in a month. That's a really, really good turnout. And then also the survey for staff had 14 respondents that gave comments. So just a quick summary of the highlights of common and frequent comments that we received. And this is not unique to the town of Northborough. This is almost every public entity that we work with. The highest priorities for your community members are accessible sidewalks. So anything, we had some comments about, sidewalk inaccessibility, inaccessible crosswalks and intersections. There were some comments about lack of accessible building entrances. So the town has been provided a full compilation of all of the comments that were received. But again, this is just a kind of a highlight of some of the frequent comments. Requests for increased amount of accessible parking, and then also requests for more inclusive recreational programs as well. So I also want to show you a little bit about the intake software that DAC uses to collect the information, because we talked about the town having a really comprehensive review of all of the assets. And so I just kind of wanted to give you a few examples of some, we call them forms. So this is something that our surveyor would use in the field to collect the information. So you can see how detailed this is. This one is a walking surface for an intersection. There's a lot of information that is collected so that we can process all of that and see if there's anything that is non-compliant for the federal ADA codes or any Massachusetts codes that would apply on here as well. So nothing is just a yes or a no answer in the form. You really, our surveyors are out there, and that's probably why you saw them for a few months. If you saw our blue shirt crew walking around, because they have to fill out this information for, in this case, any intersection that they would come across. We also have another example to show you of accessible parking. So this would be the parking space. And again, you can see how detailed these are. So you're not just going to get a report that says, no, your parking is not compliant. It's going to be, it's not compliant because the outline is faded. It's not compliant because someone must travel behind other spaces. If they're parked in the accessible space, it's not compliant because the parked vehicle may encroach into the path of travel and it doesn't have a wheel stop. It doesn't have a sign that says no parking. This is an accessible parking spot. So, and then we do have photographs that are also included. There is a little, you could probably see the little icon of the camera up here. So when our surveyors are out there, they're not only taking measurements, but they're also taking photographs of all of the elements as well. And just one more quick form example. This one is for a surface of a sidewalk. And again, you can see how detailed these are so that when the town is looking at the information, they have all of the details about the non-compliant items so that you can use that information to put together a transition plan for barrier removal over time, because you know everything that needs to be taken care of at that, in this case, it would be at a sidewalk. So the next steps, the town staff will continue to review the transition plan reports that are available to the town staff in DAC-TRAC, also develop the strategies and plans for barrier removal over time. Again, the ADA doesn't have, just like any law, sometimes it's a little gray. There's no specific time frame that the law states a transition plan has to be done by. It just needs to be a reasonable time frame. So if the Massachusetts Office on Disability is looking at your transition plan and they see that you say you're going to have it all done in a year, that doesn't sound reasonable. But if you say you're going to have it done in 45 years, that is also not reasonable. Something in the 10, 15, 20-year range is generally acceptable for the transition plan to remove all of the barriers. And the transition plan does not need to be by law. It does not have to be adopted or accepted by the Board of Selectmen. Because it is really designed to be flexible. It really needs to change, you know, as time goes on and the town plans projects year over year and your budgets change. Bring in the items from the transition plan that are affected by those plans. And that is how you manage your transition plan over time. So if you determine right now, maybe your best guess is you're going to be removing barriers at a certain facility in 10 years, but then 5 years from now, you have a project that would take care of those. You just move those dates, the projected dates of barrier removal in your transition plan up 5 years, because you're taking care of them as you're planning your project. So they're not set in stone. The transition plan is always going to be in flux, and it's always going to align with other projects that the town is doing. And so including the ADA compliance and accessibility upgrades into construction projects is how you do that. So anytime the town is planning construction and remodeling and renovation, check the DAC-TRAC software to see if there's anything that is not in compliance at that area and build that into your projects. Maintenance of accessible features is also very important. There is an ADA code that says you have to do that. So you can't just stripe a parking lot one time and say it's good forever. That's not possible. If the signage falls down, you need to rehang it. So the maintenance of the accessible features is also something that the town needs to maintain. And some of those can be done by town staff. I was mentioning maybe objects or vegetation hanging over sidewalks that make a vertical clearance issue. Those trees or bushes or whatever they are going to need to be trimmed regularly. So that's maintenance of accessible features. You can't just do that one time and it would be good forever. And then also moving into the programmatic ADA coordinator for the town to provide ongoing review of policies and processes to ensure continued non-discriminatory practices. That really is the programmatic maintenance of accessible features. So if the town is doing something correctly, just continue to do that correctly. If the town is doing something that could be enhanced, we want to enhance it to make it more accessible. And then we also want to continue and maintain doing that in the most accessible manner. So at this time, we will open it up to anyone from the board who may have questions about the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Members of the board, any questions? Lisa.
Well, I've got
Julia.
questions. So now, when did this actually start? Because this is the only second time I've really heard much about it. So when did this all start? And is it something the state has mandated, or is it something the town did to be able to be in compliance with some grants?
I'll kind of get into that for just a second. If you're asking when the ADA law began, it was 1990.
No, I'm not asking that.
Okay.
Questions of today and presentation today and the evaluation and everything that was done. And then I assume that we have some program that we're getting to overview our monthly, yearly maintenance of all these things or changes. That's a program that we're going to be having from you that goes with this whole evaluation that you've done. Is that correct? Because I really don't have any background information on it.
We applied for Massachusetts Office of Disability grant last year. We were not awarded the grant. We applied again this year. We were awarded the grant. The completion of a self-evaluation and transition plan is a requirement of the American with Disabilities Act, and that's why we engaged DAC to perform these services. As soon as the snow melt was done, they were able to go out and assess the facilities, and that's how we got to where we are today. As Jenny indicated, there is a software portal that DAC has for us to access as the owners and operators and maintainers, and we'll utilize that as, I don't want to call it a punch list, but an itemization of improvements and maintenance components going forward.
Okay. And I think I have to applaud. I think this is fabulous. I'm so glad that you applied for it and that you got a grant and that we're going through all this, because of course one of my big things is ADA compliance and sidewalks for people to be comfortable and safe on. So I'm very, very pleased with this. How is this working into, I guess the questions will be for you first, as opposed to Scott. Is there a booklet now for us to look at? We can go in and talk about it with either our staff, or how do we access the information that you put together?
So thank you very much. Yes, so there are specified town staff members who have access to the DAC software. So if there is a request for information for a certain sidewalk segment or a certain facility, you could go to Scott or Sean at the town who have access to DAC, and they would be able to run a report for you for that specific area and provide that to you.
Becker, I believe the executive summary was posted. And the board was provided that in their packet, I think. So you would have access to that through that link. Is that correct, Becca? Bob?
Yeah, there'll be a final plan that's distributed and posted on the website that will list the findings of the ADA plan, and then the details of that will be contained within the software that staff will have access to use to update as we make changes, like Scott said. So there'll be a plan posted and distributed once finalized. And, the prioritization of the plan is sort of the next step.
The old days of getting a 3-inch 3-ring binder, 17 copies of it distributed to everyone is sort of over, and it's now a database management exercise. But there is an executive summary that is in draft form and will be provided.
All right, but we could get one 3-inch binder, couldn't we, for the office? For us old people who like to look at paper.
You may need more than 3 inches.
But all of us, it's funny because we've got the generational thing where the younger generation, they don't want to see paper.
Right.
We can certainly provide printed copies. The only caveat that I'll state, and this was mentioned in the presentation, is that it is intended to be a living document, right? So, we are going to address items in the plan as we move towards full compliance. And so, the plan it is accurate in this moment in time, but if we do what we're supposed to do, it's never going to be accurate again, right? Because we're going to be addressing things as they come. So I think that's important for people to understand, and that's why it's not intended to be adopted. It's intended to sort of be a guide for us to move towards full compliance, which is the ultimate goal.
And that was all by design under the ADA law. I mean, when the law was created, the idea behind the transition plan is what everybody understood. A lot of things were out of compliance, and really the Title II entities weren't funded for these things, right? So it was meant to look at this over time. So Becca's spot on, is that it's a living, breathing document. So the data we have today will modify over the course of the year. But Lisa, to your point, is that being able to understand how to not only where you're at today, but show the progress, that really is the intent of the plan, is that this is meant to be a good faith effort by the entities to actually attain compliance. I don't think anybody ever attains 100% compliance, but is there a good faith effort showing that? So we always say with these projects is that we're handing it off to you. Now the real work begins. We gave some diagnosis. Now you have to go towards the cure, if you will. But that being said, it's going to be at your pace and your timing. But as Jenny alluded to, you can't do it in 1 year, and you can't say I'm going to get it done in 50. We have to have a reasonable approach to this good faith effort. But Scott and Sean's leadership, and with Becca as well, you're well on your way at this stage, so it's good.
I'm glad to hear that. Just as I say, it's a starting point to have, and I know weeks, and we also have some ARPA money that we could utilize to get some of these other things done quicker. So.
Well, and the other important thing to note is now that we have the self-evaluation and transition plan, we can go back to MOD and apply for project grants so we can get money to attack some of these projects as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa. Julianne, I know you had your hand up.
I did. Thank you very much for the presentation. My question is, so you mentioned a decade is a reasonable amount of time to, somewhat complete the list, but are there certain conditions that the law says require, for example, immediate correction, like a tree growing out of the middle of a sidewalk or something? Are there laws, or is it or do we just make our own priority list?
Yeah, that's the law. This is interesting. The law only states you have to list your projected dates of barrier removal, right? So you have to tell the world when you intend to fix these items. Well, the only way you get a list built is then you somewhat have to prioritize, right? There's some things that you need to take place, but priority is a relative term. We say it's a relative term as it comes to the ADA, because a priority may be something that you are able to fix right away, right? What is something that is readily achievable? Well, that can be a priority because it's going to get done as part of another project, or it was already in the works, so it was already funded. We also go the other side. Where is there a safety issue and an ADA issue in the same place? So i.e. a trip hazard or a protruding object. So that may be a priority. What I will tell you is that our software defaults to what the Department of Justice believes to be some priorities. And what that means is that the Department of Justice says, let's look at the exterior of the facilities where you host your programs as a priority. Because if I can't get you into the facilities where all these programs are being hosted, right? If I can't get that in a compliant fashion, then what does it matter if the program itself is compliant? Because if I can't get you in there, or if it's not compliant, then the program itself, and I'm not saying it doesn't matter, I'm just kind of emphasizing that a little bit. But and that's what DACTRAC allows you to do. DACTRAC is going to allow you to prioritize. Jenny has been able to show staff how to filter data to say, and I'll give you an example, is that if you have a sidewalk panel that is displaced by over an inch or 2 inches or 3 inches, those become trip hazards, if you will. So the software will allow you to review where are all my changes in elevation or holes in the asphalt or whatever that may be that's X amount of size, and that creates priorities. So what I will tell you, Julianne, the best way to describe it, this is a risk management exercise as well. And so you have to determine at some level where is our most risk? Can we handle these things? You know, in some places they say, well, maybe we need a new elevator. I'm just exaggerating for effect, but maybe we need these type of things. Well, you don't have $500,000 to do that today, right? So that's what the design of the self-evaluation transition plan is. Maybe we don't host the programs in that location anymore where we have high risk or those type of things. So rather than just getting out jackhammers and breaking things up and trying to fix them, maybe we evaluate where our programs are hosted. So that's where the self-evaluation transition plan are meant to work together. And that's what the team, staff will start working towards over time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julianne. Kristen.
I may have missed this because I was reading the packet and the some of the details in your presentation. But who is our ADA coordinator?
That is Becca Meekins.
Right. Hi, Becca. Okay, good. I see. I was guessing. I was thinking it was either Sean or Scott. So, all right, great. Thank you.
I've got a. Oh, sorry, Lisa. Go ahead.
Just as related to this, if there were somebody who does come in that's ADA
has a disability,
yes, and has a problem with an area, and they file a complaint, you have to. How many days do you have to fix that? Because that's different than trying to be compliant with this program, right?
True. The purpose of the self-evaluation and transition plan allows the town to proactively plan to remove your barriers. And what you're talking about is someone filing complaints. So that's reactionary. So that's the purpose of the self-evaluation and transition plan. But I think what you're talking about too is someone filing a complaint that would be potentially considered a grievance. So if someone says that they have a grievance that they could not participate in one of your programs, that's the whole purpose of the procedure, to resolve that grievance. If it is something that is a physical barrier to prevent them from taking advantage of that program, the immediate solve could be that there's a programmatic change that can be made. If someone says that they can't fill out an application or something because the counter is too high, something that the town could do would just be hand them a clipboard. And that doesn't take care of the counter, but it takes care of making sure that they have access to be able to, fill out an application or fill out a program at that front desk.
Tim, not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. So part of the ADA requirements, obviously, is the self-evaluation transition plan, identification of a ADA coordinator. There are a couple other ones regarding reasonable accommodations and what Jenny just touched on, the grievance process. Do you mind, if you can, give a little summary of those other pieces of the requirements?
Yep. And if we start with the overall goal, the cool part about the ADA, until it's not, it really is meant to be a good faith effort. It really was. From the beginning, it's like, we understand there's not enough funds to fix everything, but if you're offering program services and activities, which you are, right, as a Title II entity, then everybody needs to get access to them. If you can't provide access in an equitable fashion, you have to provide an alternative in an equitable fashion. So that's where it starts. So there, it starts with some baselines, is that you need to notice and post who's in charge of the ADA. So that's your ADA 504 coordinator. You have to post and notice and post your rights afforded to persons with disabilities. Well, the town is in the process of getting that updated, but it's there. The last, another one is the ADA grievance procedures, is that it was meant to be the remediation effort or mediation effort. So people just didn't immediately go sue or file a claim. It's like, I have a problem. And Lisa, you asked a simple question, is, how fast do you need to respond? There are times by which you need to communicate back to them. And then there's the secondary, is that when or how are we going to resolve this? When are we going to fix this? And there's not always a harsh time frame to that, because that's what your transition plan's about. But by definition, a grievance request, no, I wouldn't call it a grievance issue, by definition is just another form of public input. Is that maybe you do have a new priority due to this grievance, right? So I don't want to say the squeaky wheel always gets the grease, but it is meant to be used that way in the methodology. So the town just doesn't have to immediately react to everything. And I don't mean that you shouldn't respond, but somebody may say, I need vertical accessibility to the fourth floor, and you don't have any plans for an elevator, or it's just impossible to do that. Well, you're going to be able to say, we totally understand, and we're looking at ways to modify that program, or here's how we can accommodate you for that. And so going back to Scott's comment, and what Jenny had alluded to earlier, is that a request for an accommodation is one of the biggest aspects of the ADA, is that how do I gain access? And if you can't provide it the way you've been doing it, how are you going to give it an alternative format? So as Jenny was alluding to, your website's a huge program, but really it's about the alternative communication. Can I read your website? Can I read the information in an alternative format? If you have park and recreation programs, and I need to accommodate somebody that's a buddy system or a support system for a pool program, I'm just exaggerating, or not, I'm just giving anecdotal information. Is the town capable of providing those things? So that's the longer term journey, is that just because you have an accommodation policy and a statement to say you can accommodate them, can you really? Well, that's the transition plan. How do I get healthy over time to get there? So the self-evaluation transition plan isn't going to stop litigation. There's enough people willing to try to do harm to towns and cities for alternative reasons, but it's your best defense, because it's showing you're taking a proactive, as Jenny alluded to, a proactive approach towards compliance over time. And you're going to know the people that are willing to do you harm because they don't want to listen. They're just looking for some alternative form of payment, if you will. But most people, if you accommodate or you communicate and work through the symptom, that's the whole plan. It's meant to be an interactive process all the way through. So Scott, I hope I answered your question there, but there's, under the law, sidewalks and alternative communication have the same value, if you will, to access to goods and services. So a lot of people end up focusing on the infrastructure, which they should, but we see a lot of people, kind of the flyby litigants, are really looking at websites and those type of things, because they don't have to get out of their pajamas to see if your website is actually compliant or not, right? They can do other things there. So we would stress is that programmatic updates are just as much important, and policy updates are as important, even more important, as physical updates in the field.
Thank you.
You bet.
I've got a couple of questions. The first one is about how often should a town do an ADA self-evaluation, and related to that, has Northborough ever done one before?
Northborough has not done one in the past that I'm aware of, self-evaluation or transition plan. I don't know what the standard update cycle is.
Yep. We're about 30 years, 34 years, 33 years into the act itself. What I will tell you is that if you think about this plan as a renewal or update year over year, you're always updating it, Mitch. That's probably one way to answer that. Mm-hmm. What I will tell you is that that's where the value of our software is a little bit, is that all the physical barriers that are out there, we got the as-is conditions. Our software applies both the ADA and state codes to that. So as state or federal codes change, we can reapply. So a lot of times what was out of compliance at one point, if new codes are developed, it may come into compliance, okay? There's a little law out there called Safe Harbor. I won't go into all that, but if you built it correctly the first time, until you make modifications, you don't have to update it. People think that's grandfathering. It's really not. But the specific answer to your question is that there isn't a straightforward answer. What we normally say is once you get 8 to 10 years out with all the maintenance, minor construction, state codes, it may make more sense to go back and re-inspect all the facilities and sidewalks. Because in the meantime, guys, you're going to be doing a lot of progress too, right? So where are the things that we updated? Because that's the key, and Jenny pounded that into staff, is that it's one thing to have this plan in place. The whole next step is showing your progress, documenting your progress. That's what makes the plan defensible, is that you are actually documenting progress moving forward. because that's the good faith effort. So Mitch, going back to your point, there's not a standard, but we normally say update the inspections every 8 to 10 years. But each year it should have an update of what you have done, what you plan to do, and how things get modified over time.
Great. Yeah. What I was really interested in is how do you then capture the change in conditions and secondarily the change in laws, buildings deteriorate, sidewalks deteriorate, something that might be in compliance now can fall out of compliance, not due to change in law, but just due to nature.
And to your point, that goes back to, as Jenny alluded to in the presentation, is the maintenance of accessible features. So having a policy of reviewing those, which you guys are at some level, you're reviewing your sidewalks, you're reviewing your doors. I mean, it's not like you're not having some sort of auditing on your facilities at some level. But documenting how you're doing that, that's what makes the plan defensible as well.
Next question is about the ability to update the transition plan, the summary that we talked about that would hopefully get posted to the town website in the near future. It sounds like this software is really for the day-to-day updating of all of this data. I'm not suggesting that all of that day-to-day gory detail go on the town website. But if your software provides the ability to export some sort of a summary that can be updated maybe on a fiscal year basis or something like that, so that people can look and see, okay, as of the last date of the export, the beginning of the last fiscal year or whenever it was done, I think that would be helpful to the community, and for those interested might be able to compare year to year and see the progress that was made toward the plan.
Yes, using the DACTRAC software, if the town wants to export specific report types, like in a summary report, so that you can show your progress year over year. Yes, there are many report styles and file types that can be exported from the DACTRAC software. So if the town wanted to publicly post those, which isn't a requirement, but we do see public entities do that, you're more than well. I mean, the data that was collected by DAC is property of the town, so you're welcome to do with it anything that you like, of course. So if you wanted to post update reports every year just to show the progress that the town has made, they're more than welcome to do that. Absolutely.
Great, thank you. My last question, I applaud you for discussing with the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. I think that was great. The town of Northborough does not have a disability commission, so I don't know whether you view that as something that we're deficient in or should do, or whether we should consider adding additional tasks to the Diversity Committee and giving them that responsibility, how other communities deal with that aspect.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of public entities that we work with that specifically have like commissions on disability. But if I read the kind of like the history of the town, there was a commission on disability that kind of merged into the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. So that's under that umbrella now. That might be, you might be doing enough if the DEI committee is also talking about non-discrimination and equity for persons with disabilities, because that really started, the ADA really started non-discrimination and equality itself, and the DEIB is just kind of building on that.
Yeah, and maybe just to echo that too, is that with the recent push with DEI, not only is it DEIB, we're seeing some committees and other entities being DEIA, with accessibility being that last A. We got asked in a forum the other day what we think of all of it. Is that the one place where there is case law in DEIA or DEIB, or however we want to view those committees, has to do with accessibility. I mean, civil rights legislation, it has case studies, and it has case law, it has all those things attached to it. So there is some framework that should be applied there for sure. It's just got a 30-year history of formalizing, if you will. So that's a long way around the mountain, Mitch, is that yes, that's probably, since you have that committee formed, this might be the best place for it to go. Now, even though we talked about all of the programmatic element, it's heavy infrastructure issues too. So I want to say this right, is that I think not everybody gets excited about curb ramps. I know Scott and Sean probably do, right? But behind all that is really the concept is how are we making our town, our world of town, Northborough, more accessible, more inviting, more inclusive, more, those type of things. So it makes some sense there, but they're probably helpful in setting priorities. So, if you wanted to have a little more internal public input from that committee, that's always helpful towards that. I always like to keep that transparent and open. And since you have some infrastructure, I would certainly use that, Mitch.
Thanks, Tim.
I'll just add, Mitch, if I could. The only thing I'll say about DEI is that, of course, the Temporary Diversity and Inclusion Committee drafted a report with recommendations, and one of those recommendations was to pursue an ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. And of course, the permanent committee was created through a lens of intersectionality, of which, disability is included. We have members of the DEIB committee who work in ADA advocacy, so we have some, expertise there. And certainly the whole idea in launching this project with the DEIB meeting was to sort of center them as the body that would sort of work with us as we move through prioritization. So that's always been the intent. And I certainly feel, that is important to the DEIB committee and is, a reason that they are involved in this process.
Fantastic. Thank you, Becca. Any other questions from the board? Any other questions or anything else from staff on this?
I'd like to thank Tim and Jenny for helping us out with the process. I got a little nervous as the snow stuck around a little longer than I had hoped, but they got it done quicker than I expected. So I appreciate the thoroughness of the evaluation. The data is critical for us allowing accommodations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm correct that you don't need any action on this tonight, correct?
Nope, there's no action or adoption by the board.
Great. Thank you very much, Scott and Sean and Tim and Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next up, we have DPW Director Scott Charpentier, authorization for DPW to file state revolving fund grant applications. Scott, hello.
Oh, long time. How you been?
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about this.
Thank you for continuing to have me. So Mass DEP, as mandated by EPA, has the lead and copper rule that's been enacted, and part of it includes an inventory of all of our water services throughout town. So part of the inventory process is to evaluate what types of pipes come into each home, what types of fittings are in those homes based on dates of construction, when certain materials were used. It's an onerous, data-driven process. We have over 4,200 water accounts. Every single one of those needs to be looked at to determine, is there a lead service line coming in? Is there a copper service line or steel service line coming in? And what are the fittings likely consistent of? We went through this with the schools. It's been a phased implementation by DEP. It started with the schools about 5 years ago, where we went through every single school and identified where lead content brass fixtures were present, where lead solder was used. A lot of bubblers were swapped out and different faucets were identified and changed. This is kind of DEP's next step toward elimination of lead and copper issues in our drinking water supply. So this is yet another unfunded mandate that luckily became a potentially funded mandate. The federal government came out with a large grant structure across the country to support the lead and copper inventories, as well as the lead service line replacement program. You may have seen that in the news. Flint, Michigan, obviously was a very prominent one in the news, and may have been a contributor to the funding. Regardless, Mass DEP received a lot of grant funding through the SRF program to do lead and copper inventories. It's a first come, first served basis. There's a limited resource there. Whomever submits early gets free money. Whomever does not, does not. So we engaged one of our consultants, Weston and Sampson, who has been working with us on database management for our water meter communication device upgrade program to help us with a grant application to the state, where the application is for $72,300. It's 100% grant. There is no local match. There is no borrowing. It's just a grant. And one of the requirements for Mass DEP is that an entity in town become an authorized signatory on grant documentation to the state. So that's what I'm here before you to ask, to have the board authorize me to sign on behalf of the town of Northborough for SRF lead and copper inventory grant application.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions from the board?
Are these gonna be on a regular basis, these grants, or is it just one grant, or is it as long as the programs are?
I see you, Julianne. You'll come up next.
This is a one-off grant program. Mass DEP received funding just, from the federal government. I'm not sure if it was for the Infrastructure Act or if it was part of another federal funding program. Regardless, it is a one-off grant program. There are a lot of communities that sought SRF loans for lead service replacements. Northborough is lucky. We don't have lead services in town, but we are required to have the inventory submitted to Mass DEP, as well as a conversion plan in the event we were to encounter lead or steel services. So I want to get this application in on behalf of the town soon, so we can be awarded grant money before everybody else takes it from us, I guess.
Julianne.
Just two questions. One is in your memorandum, it says develop inventories for public and private side material. Is that from the public pipe to the house? Is that what private side material mean?
The water system, the municipal water system includes water mains. Connected into each water main is a corporation. The corporation goes to a public side service line that goes to a valve at the property line referred to as a curb stop. The curb stop is where the town's ownership ends. From the curb stop into the home is private ownership, all the way into the meter and throughout the home. We're responsible for inventorying all the way through to inside the house. As a public water supplier, I'm responsible for water quality at your faucet, not at my pipe, but at your faucet. So the goal there is obviously public health, public safety, that I'm providing a safe drinking water source to our residents. So we're inventory both the public side as well as the private side.
So eventually, are any lead or copper pipes we're going to have to replace? Is that the goal here?
Not copper pipes. The identification of copper pipes is that they're compliant, they're copper. The concern with copper is they used to solder it with lead and tin solder. So when I was soldering pipes in my teens, it was 40% lead and 60% tin. And they phased out the tin, they phased out the lead, and brass used to be lead content brass. All brass is lead free now. So the part of the process is to identify age of construction. Is it likely the home has lead content solder in it? To identify the corporations for a certain era in construction time, 80s-ish, there was iron corporations we used. Well, iron rusts. Rust can be problematic. So it's all part of the inventory, both the private side and the public side.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Other questions from the board? Okay. Any other comments?
I'm glad you're doing this. I really appreciate all the proactive work to keep the water safe.
Thank you.
Great. Hearing no other comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion.
A motion to be first in line for the free money? Sure. I move the board I move the board authorize the DPW director to file state revolving fund SRF grant applications on behalf of the town.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Kristen, seconded by Laura. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Kristen,
Aye.
Julianne,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Laura.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. You've got your action. Scott, thank you very much for joining us.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Select Board members.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, American Rescue Plan ARPA funding requests. Bob, you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, I think the board has a memorandum showing the expenses, various expenses through two different time periods, 6/23 to 9/23, and then through 9/23 to 6/24. With the money that you have now, it's projected that through 6/24, you'll have approximately 10,000 left, roughly in the amount that's been appropriated for White Cliffs. So the idea here is to have a little additional, what you might call an emergency fund, just whatever might happen at White Cliffs. I mean, you have a very expensive asset there, old asset. My understanding from Scott is that when there was some problems with the electrical service, you spent about $20,000 rehabilitating that and repairing it. There's no telling what might happen up there. And I think for an asset of that age and size and value to the town, that's a small amount of money to have readily available, rather than, in case of emergency, have to get a meeting together and have the money appropriated. I think it's prudent to have at least this amount of money available on an emergency basis.
Thank you. Any questions on this item? Julianne?
Yeah, so in the memorandum, it says, as of today, there's 61,000 and change. Below you will find estimated expenses for the next 2.5 years. Does that mean that you think that there will be no increase in any of these for the next 2.5 years?
I think that's a typo. It's intended to show the cost through the end of fiscal year 2024. That's what the chart shows.
Okay, and one other quick question. What are our legal fees for?
Bob, are you able to answer that question?
I would just be speculating.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what the legal fees are for.
I think questions come up every once in a while based on possible uses and how we've dealt with related issues, how we deal with questions from the public and so forth that need to be referred to council, and that's just my guess as to what that's been used for. But I don't know any more than that.
Well, maybe I mean I think it's probably prudent to have it, but maybe you could get back to us on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think there was I wouldn't tell us too much. There was a budget expense list that was distributed during the time we were talking about the Metro West housing proposal that detailed the expenses that have been accrued against the $2.4 million of White Cliffs that was allocated at town meeting in 2016. There were a number of those that did say attorney costs or counsel costs in there, but I don't remember if there was any detail on those line items for that, but we can get that.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? So Bob, just to clarify, this is sort of a little budget set aside for urgent issues that come up that need to be dealt with right away by the DPW, who's in care of the building. There's nothing identified right now that this would be used for, But this is, in your opinion, just prudent to have this available if needed, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And it would be, for lack of a better term, an emergency fund. I don't think the intent is to use it for operating costs.
Perfect. Thank you. There are no other questions. I'll entertain a motion on this.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to approve use of ARPA funds in the amount of $20,000 for emergency maintenance, if needed, of the White Cliffs facility and for expenditure of such sum by the Public Works Department pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Julianne, seconded, I think, by Kristen first. Before any questions? Scott Charpentier, welcome back.
I was watching you on YouTube when I got out and I jumped back on. I tried to disconnect, but I'm not capable of it. Mr. Chair, you're absolutely correct. Legal fees come up from time to time. There are abutters that have concerns. For example, we recently had a butter that had a hazardous tree in their backyard. They requested access to the property for their tree contractor to remove the tree. We went through town council. Is it okay? Vetted out the insurance policy. That's the process. It happens often. As our interim town administrator, Bob Reed, indicated, we did have a tree fall on our electrical service. I think it was 2 years ago. We spent close to $20,000, a little over $10,000 replacing that. As a facility, budget operator here, I worry when we have an old home, an old property with a large mass of land and have little to no contingency fund in the event something happens. So I'd be very comforted by having this be supported by the board.
Scott, my only request of you for this money is if you have to use it, let us know. Send us an email or give us a report at a meeting, just to keep us in the loop if something goes on that you need to use this for.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Before I ask for a vote, Lisa, you've been recusing yourself on White Cliffs related items. You haven't said anything there. Are you recusing yourself? You haven't said anything, so I assume you may be recusing yourself without stating it. I just want to know whether I should ask you for your vote on this or not.
If you had, I would have abstained. So. No.
Okay. So I won't ask you for that. But any other discussion before we vote? All those in favor? Julianne?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor, and I'll suggest that the meeting minutes show that Lisa recused herself on this item. There was a related item that's been under discussion that is not particularly not on the agenda regarding to White Cliffs, but Bob and I thought it would be appropriate to just provide an update. There's been some discussion about bringing on a facilitator to help us through the process of finding a use compatible with the site, compatible with the town's interests and so forth. Lori Connors, our town planner, has done some work identifying some possible people that can do that work. She wasn't able, she's on vacation now, much needed. So she doesn't have anything for us tonight, but I anticipate by our next meeting she will. She's told Bob and I that she has a rough guess of $25,000 to $30,000 would be the approximate cost for that. We're not asking for any funding on that tonight. If you're going to ask me any questions about what that entails, I can't tell you. But by our next meeting, I anticipate that Lori will be here and she'll be able to tell you. But I just wanted everyone to know that that's in process. That's the only other White Cliffs item, and there was also under ARPA funding discussion for a workshop led by someone that can give us some guidance. Bob, do you want to tell us a little bit about this and about the individual you're suggesting?
Well, the gentleman's name is Jeff Nutting. Jeff has been a town administrator and involved in all facets of municipal government for as long or longer than I have. No, I think he's younger than me. But I have reached out to groups, MRI, I talked to Community Paradigm and others about getting suggestions. I think that they would agree that Jeff would be the excellent choice. I know that Jeff has done this training before, comes very highly recommended. I think that, even boards that aren't as new to the positions as this board, I believe would be interested in board training. There's an old saying, you don't know what you don't know. And it's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity for the board to learn how to work together, how to work within the environment of local government, within the environment of departments, and particularly within the environment of the town charter that you have, which is particularly strong in some areas, dealing with the town administrator and others. So I think it would be very useful. It would be a one-day session. As you can see, Jeff has suggested some sample questions that he would be able to work off of. And my interpretation of those questions, that it would actually get the board thinking about, what is their role? What do they view as important? How do you implement that? How do you set goals? This is something that I view as happening after the new town administrator has been hired, at whatever time the board feels is appropriate, maybe after a couple months, but something that individuals should be involved in, particularly since oftentimes when these goals are established, these are the types of things that can be mutually established, and these mutually established goals can be the basis for the town administrator's evaluation. So I think that input, for a number of different reasons, for the new administrator would be very important. But I think this would be very worthwhile. As I said, it doesn't have to be a particularly new board that would find this interesting. And I think Jeff would be an excellent choice.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions? Laura?
Does he have a website or any, I know you're saying he's got these great reviews, and I'm definitely in favor of this. I'm not opposed to it, but I'd love to just read a little bit more about what he's done for other towns, just to kind of gauge how I want to make my suggestions for what I'd like to take away from this type of an experience.
Sure. I believe he's still away out of country. He's been on vacation after he finished his last interim position. Now he works as an interim administrator also. But I can certainly ask, for example, when he gets back, for a copy of his resume. That would give you an idea of the different types of things that he's done.
I would love that. Thank you.
Julianne?
Yeah, so maybe we could delay this vote until we get more information about Mr. Nutting. And I mean, since we're obviously not going to do it until we get until the new administrator comes on board, that actually may be a while. So we have a little more time to just, either read his bio or read his website. Can we, I feel like I don't have enough information about this gentleman before I vote on it tonight.
No, sure. I think the idea here was to keep it on the front burner, so to speak. And there's no rush in doing this because it's going to be done, several months from now after you have the new person. So sure. I think that, I don't know if Jeff really has a website. I doubt it, but I can get his resume and whatever other information you would like. And certainly I'm available if you would like to talk to me a little bit more about the idea and the process and have any questions about this. I'd be happy to meet with you or talk to you over the phone or whatever format to answer any questions or concerns you might have about the process.
Oh, it's an absolute, I think it's a great thing to do. And no matter what stage you are in your career as a select board member. But I do want to also address one thing, and that is that we had a very considered email wondering why we would use ARPA funds for this. And I would assume it's because the Board of Selectmen get a limited budget. There's no money for that. And ARPA seems to be the most the best way to facilitate
available, right? Well, I mean, just my 2 cents, but I think for the amount of ARPA money you have and the cost of this, Jeff's fee is $900. It's sort of background noise.
Well, I mean, I would tend to agree with you, but it was a legitimate question by a resident, and I think it's important to address publicly. So, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it was not put into the annual budget for FY '24. So there is no line item specifically for this. If ARPA didn't exist, we could probably find it somewhere else in the select board or administration budget. But that would mean less money for something that was budgeted. So that's why I thought it wasn't a bad idea to consider ARPA for this. Lisa?
Well, I'm going to say something that everybody be, why don't we check with Be Well, since this is something to do with all of us, and we might be weller if we get some money from another source.
Well, Be Well is an ARPA fund, and I don't think a board workshop would be consistent with what the select board a couple of years ago allocated the money for Be Well for. I'd want to check. Probably, Becca, you probably know more than anyone at this meeting exactly what the purpose was for Be Well, but I don't. My gut feeling
I
is
think all the Be Well money has been allocated.
Okay.
I don't think there's any funding remaining that hasn't already been slated for the project.
Yeah, my understanding is that if you wanted to continue with Be Well, they would need additional money.
Okay.
All right, so it sounds like we don't need to make a decision and take a vote on this anyway, but I would like at least consensus that the board is comfortable spending around $900 from, whether it be from ARPA or from any other source yet to be determined, for a board workshop, somewhat like Bob is recommending. Sound reasonable?
Yes.
I'm seeing a lot of yeses, and so I'll take that as a yes, but we will, I think, skip the motion on this tonight. I'll also add that Mr. Nutting is somebody that I've seen speak at conferences for many, many years. He's well known and well respected. I don't think I've ever spoken to him one-on-one, but when his name popped up as a possible person to bring in for this, made a lot of sense to me also. But there may be other people that we identify that are worth discussing as well. Okay, that was the ARPA item. Next item, sign acceptance of deed for Old Town Hall property 4 West Main Street. Bob.
Well, you had the acceptance of deed from council. There has not been a closing date established yet. Council would like to have this signed and feels that he could do the closing this week. There have also been some questions about whether this involves or has there been a purchase and sale agreement, and council's feeling is, since the terms of this transaction were laid out in the original deed and also in discussions that he's had with the property owner's attorney, P&S was unnecessary. There have been some discussions about easements, etc. Council feels that all those questions have been answered. Easements that had been granted by the property owner will go away after the transaction, with the transaction. And then if there are going to be any additional discussions about parking, et cetera, which I know is a concern of some board members, I think those can be separate discussions as it can be taken care of on their own.
Thanks, Bob. So just to bring everyone up to date, town meeting, including the audience, town meeting appropriated $10,000 at the annual town meeting a year and a few months ago for this purpose. And this is the old town hall. When it was sold to a private developer, we were given the option 40 years later of repurchasing it for $10,000, and that's what town meeting approved, and that's what we're going to be doing. We just need to approve the deed, and then council can complete closing. The board did a walkthrough of the property a couple weeks ago, and what the town will do with it later will be determined. We don't have any use for it, but this is just the timing. We can't wait longer to purchase it back because the 40 years runs out. Julianne?
So Bob, could you just explain what you meant by we'll address the parking later?
Well, there have been some concerns that parking, whether it's through easements or agreements, were related to this transaction, and they're not. So, as I said, if there are, for example, I think the present property owner is interested in maintaining some spaces or have access to spaces in the lot across Blake Street. I mean, I haven't had any definitive discussions with the property owner about that. That might be a board discussion about how that lot is going to be used, whether it's going to be a municipal lot, whether it's going to be owned to the public, open to the public, whether there's going to be any restrictions on it, those types of discussions. But as I said, I think the parking there is really unrelated to this transaction tonight. And if there are going to be additional discussions on that or additional concerns about how it's used, who would have use for it, those would be discussions outside of the signing of the agreement tonight.
When does the town say that the town now owns the parking?
Well, the lot across the street, the town does own.
There was no agreement with the owner of 4 West Main that they could exclusively use that parking lot?
No, that's what I'm talking about. If there's going to be any kind of agreement like that, that would be something that would be further discussed. But I'm not aware of any particular agreement that guarantees that those businesses or the property owner would have rights to any of that parking lot.
I think I understand Julian's question a little differently. I think your question was there an agreement for exclusive use by the users of 4 West Main of the town-owned parking? So Bob and town council did a lot of research on this. And to give credit where credit is due, Lisa has also done a lot of research on this, has helped and educate all of us that in 1985, as a follow-up to the sale of the building, there was an easement granted by the town to the same owner of 4 West Main and tied to that building that gave them use of a lot of that parking area for the purpose of 4 West Main. Because we are now going to be the owners of 4 West Main, both our council and sellers council agree that that easement gets extinguished. So, and that's in that document, in the deed that we're being asked to approve tonight. So that agreement did exist, and it is going to go away simultaneous with the town owning the property. What Bob is talking to is the same owner as 4 West Main also owns 2 nearby buildings, the building where Fatouche Restaurant is and the building just behind with the doggy daycare. And there is some question about making sure that sufficient parking for the customers of those buildings remains. There is no agreement. I don't think there's a problem with that. That municipal parking lot becomes municipal parking that anybody can use. And there's also a lot of land in between those 2 buildings that probably supplies sufficient parking, if needed. And there's also a couple of municipal lots nearby off of Pierce, at least one for the fire station and then another further up towards Hudson.
Okay, thank you. That clears things up.
Great. Thanks, Julianne. Any other questions? Lisa?
Hi. I would like to just kind of clear up a little bit more of that. Originally in 1982, an agreement, 11-page agreement was put together and all of this information was in it. It would have been nice if we found it a few years ago and we wouldn't have all these questions about it. But you're absolutely right in that the new deed extinguishes the lease, or actually the license that they offered for the 40 years. I feel that by saying now, we'll just sign this and we'll discuss parking later, is probably not a good idea to discuss it later. I think that if down the road, the restaurant that's there, Fatouche's, must have had a permit for occupancy or for seating, and that the restaurant owner has to have an X amount of parking for their seating. So I'm not sure how they manage that or what they use for land to talk about parking, but both of the 2 pieces that are on the other side are owned by the same owner, so that they could certainly use both sides of the building for parking, and that it will be a municipal lot, so that, if somebody comes in to pick up a to-go amount of food, that they come and go. I don't think that should be even a problem. I would be a little concerned about giving certain parking spots away without any, you know, without a full discussion by the board and what they might do. So, you know, because everything, I'm a, you know, dot your I's and cross your T's person. I like to have detail. The acceptance of the deed is pretty tiny, and it's as clean as it can be, I guess, but not having a lot of detail in it. So I think that as long as we understand that, you know, once the deed is done and transferred, that we're back to ownership and, you know, a full municipal lot, which I would love to see lined and treed and used and signed so that we all know what's going on with that area and help to start making the downtown look a little bit more attractive, regardless of whatever happens at 4 West. I think we need to start showing the people that we're moving forward on things, and that's my opinion.
Thanks, Lisa. Any other questions or comments? Okay, being none, I will entertain a motion.
Hold on, I believe that's my motion. Uh-oh.
If you don't have it, Lisa, if you want, I can read it and then you can do a so moved.
Oh, I found it. Thank you. And actually, before I do this, I just want to say one thing. I want to thank the Kwan family for what they went through. I did see a video of them first getting the building back in the early 80s and all the work they had done to it. And they were trying to maintain all the moldings, and the inside was being, they put an elevator in and they started to do all this wonderful renovations. And then a fire started, and obviously the whole building wasn't able to be saved. And at that time, they didn't, actually the town gave them the option of just taking their insurance money and not rebuilding. And Mr. Kwan decided that he wanted to build a building back, and he wanted to make it as much like he could with the outside, obviously. And it was probably a labor of love and something he probably wanted to leave behind for his family. And for the amount of time he's had it, I think I just wanted to say thank you for that. And perhaps we can do a little plaque in the parking lot or something for him and later time, just to show that that we appreciated all he did. Oh, now it's time for motion. I move the board to approve and execute the acceptance of deed for the repurchase of the old town hall property located at 4 West Main Street.
Second.
Motion's been made by Lisa, seconded by Kristen. Any other discussion?
It was seconded by Julianne.
Oh, it was seconded
by Laura. Sorry.
By Laura. I was looking down at my notes and it sounded like your voice, Kristen. All right, seconded by Laura. I apologize. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Lisa.
Aye.
Laura.
Aye.
Julianne.
Aye.
Kristen.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. We have our deed. Thank you, Bob. Next up, we have reports. Let's see. Laura, do you have any reports tonight?
Yeah, just a couple quick ones. I got to attend the Friends of the Senior Center dinner that was hosted by the Cellar. And I just wanted to say how grateful I am for all the businesses that partner up with different organizations in town to help them with fun ways to help raise money. And then I also wanted to say that I did make it to the Be Well event, and I appreciate all the work that went into that as well. That's all I've got for today.
Thanks, Laura. Lisa, any reports tonight?
Yes, we had started off with our no parking on sidewalks program, as we talked about the last meeting. And I believe that that Bob has talked to the community advocate to try to get some information out there so people can read about it and know the importance of why we'd like to be able to enforce that law. And I like to try to be able to get some more movement on that as well. I know many people do park there in front of their homes sometimes, thinking that's just another spot for them to put their cars. East Main Street might be one of the places. And I just would like to, you know, again, bring awareness to the community that we're doing everything we can to create a safe space for people to use their public ways. And the second event that I went to, along with many of our board members, was to the MPIC. I think it was the final public input And it had, was, again, it's an interesting cross-section of an older view and a younger view. And those are two different things. The younger view, of course, wants their bike lanes and wants to have all this bustle and thinks this is lovely to have their places to go to in a community. The older group are going, what? They're a little bit shocked at the vision and how the vision worked into a 5 to 10 year plan and almost gave us a city in 3 different areas of town. And I had asked the question because we've waited for quite some time to on design review to finally get a look that's been determined and signage and the look of signage to be determined. And we've been told the past couple of years, even at town meeting, that we should wait until MPIC made their decision. So I did ask Rick Leaf, and Rick Leaf said, it's not our decision, that should go before design review. So that will be our next discussion with the planning board, that we will move forward on doing some of those things and bringing some of that back to zoning, and hope that this time we'll have some cooperation. And that's going to be it for my reports tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Julianne, any reports tonight?
Yeah, just two quick things. I just want to remind the residents that we have established a permanent traffic safety committee, and we're looking for people to volunteer to serve on that. Please, if you have any questions, you can email us about, what the duties would be of this committee. But I encourage you to, if you have any concerns or ideas, to please reach out to us and apply for this committee. And the second thing is, I did bring up at the last meeting about the senior center being used in off hours for groups like the Garden Club. And I was wondering if we could put that on the agenda so that even if it's just determined that it can't be open during off hours, that the taxpayers understand why.
My suggestion is maybe have Bob work with Kendra, the senior center director, in coming up with some options as to whether that's feasible. Get it out to you, and then decide whether there's any board action on that. I know there's already been some discussion on that. I don't want to put it on the next agenda because I don't know if we'll have anything specifically to talk about there. But I agree, getting those answers makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's
Thanks,
it.
Julian. Okay. Christian, any reports tonight?
Yes, quick one for me too. So one more note on both what Lisa and Julianne said. So because there were so many heavily invested people at the MPIC Downtown Revitalization meeting, I would like to say that any of them who enjoy that kind of thing should probably apply to be on a town board or committee, because this is their thing. They're going to love it. They get to do it once a month, and they get to answer questions and, I don't know, do all the research. A lot of these people were really excited to talk about this downtown and all the options, and they had lots of questions. And I just feel like these are the people, if they're not already on a town BCC, they should definitely apply, and we would love to entertain that. And I got an email today that the Northborough Guide, which has been run by Liz Nolan and Marilee Borden, is being taken over by the library, like it's being given to the library. And I know that Marilee has been running it for a long time with Liz's help, and Liz has just been volunteering for the last year. And I just would like to thank both of those women for all the information that they've been giving everyone who subscribes to the guide. And I congratulate them, and I'm really happy that the library is the one who's taking it over, because I think they will also do a fantastic job. And I love that it's not falling apart, that Northborough businesses and people who have events will still have a great resource to share with everyone. So my quote tonight is by Shakespeare. You may have heard of him. He was a playwright a long time ago. And it's a quick one. Summer's lease hath all too short a date. I thought that was perfect. So go out and enjoy summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. I've got a couple of things. I do want to update everyone in the public on the Town Administrator Screening Committee process. The screening committee conducted interviews last week, and there are 3 finalists, which I will not name now. MRI is our search consultants are doing some due diligence in the process. No one else on the select board knows who they are. I only know because I was on the screening committee. If all goes well, we anticipate that the names and qualifications of the 3 candidates will be announced this coming Friday. And that's to the select board and to the general public. Everything becomes public at that point. And that next Thursday, July 6th at 5 p.m., the select board will be meeting in person at Town Hall to interview all 3 candidates and then consider making a conditional offer of employment to anyone that we feel is the right fit for us. Very, very exciting process. I'm sworn to secrecy and executive session laws in not revealing anything about these candidates, but we had a lot of great candidates, well more than 3 that were qualified for this, and it took some effort to narrow it down. I hope the select board and the public is pleased with the results, and we may have a hard decision for us next Thursday. In addition to Laura, I also attended the end of the school year carnival run by the Be Well program, really run by town staff through the Be Well budget. That was last week on the last day of school. It was a lot of fun. It was the 2nd year in a row that they've run it. And I applaud everyone who put in a lot of effort for that. It was so much fun to see hundreds and hundreds of kids running and jumping and screaming and doing all the fun things the kids do to celebrate the end of the school year, while their grown-ups were meeting a lot of town staff who had little booths set up to learn about some of the town programs, police and school and library and fire, Board of Health, and a number of others, and some community organizations such as the Helping Hands and the Northborough Rotary were there. It was really, really a good event. The Be Well program, as we've heard, has come to a close financially. I hope there is some interest in finding some way to fund a program like that in future years, particularly an end of school year carnival. I think the kids, after 2 years in a row, the kids just expect it. It's so much fun. We should find a way to provide that. This past Sunday night was the first community affairs concert for the summer out of 4 concerts that are planned. And I attended most of it. And it was a lot of fun. I missed maybe the first 15, 20 minutes. And 2 concerts that are coming up is July 9th at 5 p.m. There's a Tom Petty tribute band, which I'm particularly excited about as a Tom Petty fan. And July 23rd, Northborough's own Zach Newbold from The Voice will be the lead performer. And that's very, very exciting and a big get for Northborough Community Affairs. And because I am a local government nerd, I want to wish everyone a happy fiscal new year on Friday night, and particularly Town Finance Director Jason Little, who has to close out the books. That ends my report.
I've never heard anyone wish a happy fiscal new year.
I have wished people happy fiscal new year for decades. Yes.
How did I miss it last year?
So that ends reports. We have a cemetery deed 1169. Would someone like to make a motion on that?
I would love to make a motion. I move the board vote to execute cemetery deed 1169.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Kristen, seconded, I think, by Laura, and then Lisa. Any other discussion? All those in favor. Kristen?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Julianne?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Vote is unanimous in favor. Deed is approved. Does anyone have any other business this evening? Seeing a resounding none, is there any public comment to close us out? We only have 2 people in the Virtual audience, if anyone has anything they would like to ask us or say, raise your virtual hand. Going once, going twice. Public comment is closed, in which case the only thing left is a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion made by Julianne, seconded by Lisa. All those in favor of adjourning, Julianne,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Laura.
Aye.
I also vote aye, unanimous. We are adjourned 10:16 p.m. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for an excellent and productive